about that. So it's go through the microphone. It's hard to solve it.
By late 2019 and early 2020, border closures and confinement measures abruptly interrupted the protests that were emerging around the world. This paralysis of widespread demonstrations during the pandemic generated the need to rethink and create alternative forms of civil resistance.
So now you can hear me?
Yes.
Good. Okay. So the setting is correct.
But you're not sharing the screen now.
I'm not sharing the screen now. Yeah, I just can stop sharing. No. I see.
Transforming our narratives, metaphors, and understandings on the living systems and their ways to break through, especially in microorganisms. Bacteria communicate.
Turn off your
they have both interspecies and interspecies languages.
Now, can you hear the sound and also see the video?
Yes, it works.
Okay, and also my microphone works. Okay, good. So the setting is correct. Good. I think we are done for the test. But how is the translation works?
Do you want to test the interpreter? We've tested before, but if you want to test it right now, I will ask them. 孙宇在吗？ Hello， 孙宇在吗？ I'm not sure whether the interpreters are here right now. Maybe because we tested before, so maybe they are going to like entering this room after we start.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. So we will hear the sound from the English channel.
I think it's I think the original channel will be in English, and if we're going to hear the Chinese, you will press the button and choose the Chinese channel.
Okay.
Check the audio for YouTube. 现在油管里的频道，我的声音至少要出2遍。
Are we going to start right now? If we're start, I'm letting the audiences in. Or should we just wait for like 2 or 3 more minutes? Yes, I think you can start anytime.
我觉得，稍等，开场应该是黄老师开，然后等一下我们再进。然后我这边应该准备好了。
Wow, I'm so impressed, actually.
OK，因为我们测试完了，因为大家可能都在直播间里头，所以我们可以随时开始，如果大家都 set up 好的话。OK，那也许我们就可以正式开始了。OK，好，各位，我们开始吧。各位线上的朋友、线下的朋友，大家好。各位下午好，跟早上好。我必须用中文讲啊，因为我们很多广大的听众跟看直播的人，可能都透过中文来理解这次的会议。
Using Chinese to understand today's meeting. So thank you very much for your participation. And this year, because of COVID and different kind of restrictions, so the 7th Network Society annual meeting is conducted in 7 cities around the world at the same time, including Shanghai, Beijing, Wuhan, Hangzhou, Taipei, Hong Kong. And today, you can see in the opening, we have the main venue, San Francisco, and together with the Internet Archive. And you can see this is a church or temple for metaverse and this new era of culture. And so today we're mainly focusing on this era when we're discussing about Web 2, Web 3, and blockchain technology, new type of point-to-point, technology, encryption, technology, etc., like cryptocurrency, etc. And so we have recalled the history of P2P technology. We want to expand the P2P technology to the communication between people to people, groups to groups. And so simply put, apart from hardware and software, we also have webware. And also with your bodies, actually, in the internet, actually, people's bodies are also very, very important. And for example, we can conduct a transaction and without knowing each other. And seems to be really convenient, but it is also worrying that we are transacting with each other without knowing each other. And it's like IOE, Internet of Everything, but, inside our heart, we seem to be more and more lonely. And so we are closer to machines. This is also something terrible, right? And so we are recalling the Web 2.0 on different levels. We're conducting this kind of journey, and we are from CAA. And so we gather a lot of artists, young coders, curators. What we pay attention to together compared with the general coders, programmers, we may have a different perspective. So much from my side. And I would like to leave the time to Liu Yisi or Yisi Liu. And so Liu Yixi is the main host in San Francisco. And so actually, Liu Yixi, is organizing this meeting across different continents. And so Liu Yixi, would you please make an opening? So Liu Yixi from San Francisco. Again, warmly welcome and thank you for your participation.
OK， 大家可以听到吗 ？OK， 我就
OK, can you hear me? OK.
那欢迎大家来到城市论坛，然后
welcome to the San Francisco Forum.
大家稍微等我一下，因为我得
Please wait a second.
现在 OK 吗？我看一下。
Yeah, can you see?
大家来到我们这个
Welcome
第七届网络
to the 7th Network Society annual meeting. And the first city forum is in San Francisco. And now we are in Internet Archive to host the meeting. And welcome to discuss together with us. And so you can see in the city where hippies and computer was born, and we are discussing P2P, this kind of new, not so new technology and a way of coordination, cooperation to better help with us in every aspect of our life. Now, let's invite the founder of Internet Archive, Bruce Call, to conduct a virtual tour. And so let's look at what is Internet Archive like, actually.
OK， 你们可以说两句话吗
Can you say something?
OK。
Okay.
You just come forward and just make an introduction.
Hello, this is Brewster Kale. Welcome to the Internet Archive. So glad that this conference is happening. We're very, very excited. I would like to give you a brief tour of our place, though it is on a Saturday, so there's nobody that is working here, but with COVID, often that's not the case. Anyway, so I would love to give you a tour around. It's a temple of openness. The idea of going and making universal access to all knowledge. And this is a place that we have purchased. This is our headquarters. It was a former church. And I would like to show you around if we can.
Sure.
Okay. So here we go. So we have video do all sorts of video tapes. We're on. So microphone. You may know of the devices of how we used to go store information before the internet. The idea of democratizing by putting things on film. This is the New York Times from 1921. This is like a e-scanner speaker.
We got to get it back to HDMI 1.
These sorts of
So it's
these special readers that nobody
is this one here or is it a different one?
It must be.
internet is better. This is what we had in the 20th century. So we're trying to
This is
bring
for
all
the
of
TV.
it
I
online.
want to get
Come on upstairs. I'll show you some more. Book art.
So you want
it turns out the
HDMI
were the first to say yes to having all of their language, everything written in their language, available for free on the internet. Isn't that the right way to live? So I think we can learn from the Balinese. This is maybe the first piece of open source hardware. It is computers we designed, we bent the metal to make a computer that we could use inside shipping containers to be able to make open source archives on a new type of model of computer, which is clusters. It's now you know it all the time because it's how Google or Amazon is all built. But then it was new. This is our hall. We have music. So we are trying to digitize everything. The idea of having everything online. This is, we are collecting 78 RPM records. These are ones from the early 20th century. So they're old records. We can play them. So people are donating these to the Internet Archive, and then we make them available. It's before there was electricity, was widely distributed, so they made them mechanical. Okay, so how do we digitize books? This is a small scanning center of the Internet Archive. Here's a book scanner. So we'll take a book and raise and lower glass to photograph the pages in the book. There's two digital cameras. Click, click. Raise the glass, turn the page, lower the glass, flatten the page, click, click. We've digitized over 6 million books. We digitize 1 million books every year. That's maybe 4,000 books a day to go and make them available for free as a library. So interlibrary loan, machine learning, many of them for controlled digital lending. Again, to make things openly available. We archive software. And we made this whole system so you could do emulations to be able to play old software. And I usually play Prince of Persia, which I've been trying to learn, and you can launch it in your browser, which was very new. We did this. Play these old things. So the idea is having everything in the past be available. So come on. Oh, we have a jukebox for 78 RPM records. And this is great. Come here with the camera. All right. Show in here. Sure. Okay, so we're going to pick a record, and I'm going to put in a coin. And this is the old way that they would go and play. Anyway, let's go upstairs. So, this was an old church. And we bought it because it matched our logo. It had the pillars. So we have presentations here. We had Aaron Schwartz stay here last weekend, where people spoke about Aaron Schwartz, but it's basically his work and how we're making openness happen. This is servers of the Internet Archive. This is maybe 7 petabytes. Goes gigabytes, terabytes, petabytes. Maybe 7 petabytes. And these are actually the live primary servers. So every time a light blinks, is somebody uploading something or downloading something from the Internet Archive. We have artwork, computer art. This is for femininity, of images of the feminine. And you sit and you will be in this artwork. It's kind of fun. Then there are statues. Maybe these are the staff of the Internet Archive. Maybe you can see them here. So if you work for the archive for 3 years, we make a small statue, and you become part of the collection to celebrate those that are working on the open world, the idea of a public service. So this is me, Wendy, Aaron Schwartz is on the page. Oh, this is a sculpture that we donated to the Library of Congress that had the first full collection of the World Wide Web. So the idea is to collect the World Wide Web and donate it to Library of Congress. An artist, Alan Rath, made this so that it has a physical body. So it's 2 terabytes in 63 inches, the World Wide Web 1997. That's what he called it. And it sat in the front hall of the Library of Congress for 15 years. We put up numbers. That's a exercise. And do you recognize that number? It's a good international number. And these are numbers. So that's pretty much the end of our tour. This is a great hall. You're welcome to use this for anything supporting the open nature.
I was just saying.
And now we'll go back to where we were. You could hear there, you'll hear machines going everywhere. These are the live copy of the Internet Archive, the almost 99 petabytes of data. We have about 1 million users, 2 million users of the website every day. Yeah, don't trip.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And people donate things. So people are donating books to the Internet Archive. We have duplicates. We give everything that we don't need away. So thank you very much for this opportunity. And I'll be speaking a little bit later about how we can unlock the web with P2P technologies.
Thank you so much for the virtual tour. It's so good.
Thank you.
Oh, yes. Okay. Let's just... Okay.
Is your microphone is not open?
哎，现在可以听到了吗 ？OK，sorry，有点紧张，因为刚刚做了这个 virtual tour，我重新说一遍，就是如果大家未来如果有机会可以来。
But I want to mention to everyone that in the future, if you are available to drop by San Francisco, you can come to our site and then to visit the field. And every Friday, there is an open lunch where people gather together for the lunch. And then for other places, our virtual tour guide had taken us to, you can just feel free to be there and get some souvenirs. And so let's go for the main session. So first of all, the first speaker is already ready online. So let me make a brief introduction of who they are. So to begin with, the first keynote speaker is Xu Rong and Natalie Rivera. So actually, Xu Rong is an artist and also a student as well. So dedicated towards across the borders of the cross-disciplinary art design and inner creation, using different perspectives to respond to the social situation and trying to use a metaphorical way to create something like a speculative scenario. Her recent work is focusing on the microbial politics and the crypto guild as well. So, and also the co-presenter is Natalia Rivera, who is an artist of emergent media, currently exploring the possibilities of digital technologies as interleaving entities, mutual aid media in the context of indeterminate and acquired knowledge creation. They are using the Mutant and the Solotomica, the global, like the network for creation, art, and science. So they are the interdisciplinary, open, and collective, and collaborative, and communitarian. So Xu Rong is going to, on their behalf, and to present their co-work, biofilm.net. So think about this work. It has won the Golden Nick Award in the interactive art category at the 2022 Linz Festival of Electronic Arts as well. So welcome Xu Rong to do the first presentation here today. Please.
Hello, everyone. I will share my screen.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, please start.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having us here. We are really glad to be able to share our research and project with you, and also really happy that our project connects to the ideas behind this Nevermind the Web3. And what we are going to share today is our project called biofilm.net, Resist Like Bacteria, which is a project about how to rethink our relations with other living organisms and how, while rethinking them, we can also create and also re-understand our technologies. So we would like to share at first our video of the project.
By late 2019 and early 2020, border closures and confinement measures abruptly interrupted the protests that were emerging around the world. This paralysis of widespread demonstrations during the pandemic generated the need to rethink and create alternative forms of civil resistance, while radically transforming our narratives, metaphors, and understandings on the living systems and their ways to break through, especially in microorganisms. Bacteria communicate. They have both intraspecies and interspecies languages. The messages they send are meant to count. Through quorum sensing, they know when they are the right amount to activate certain behavior. Since as individuals, they are too little to have an influence, being many, they manage to act unanimously and get more strength, resistance, virulence, swarming, bioluminescence, and many others. One of the most amazing collective behaviors is biofilm. When bacteria reach a host place and they know they are just enough to act, they start creating a protecting barrier. Biofilm covers them and lets them hide while they continue multiplying, so observers cannot know how many individuals there are. While they grow inside biofilm as a collective, they become 1,000 times the bacterial resistance. Biofilm.net, our open project, praises bacterial resistance in contrast to the reductionist discourse of war. We took one of the Hong Kong movement's icons, the yellow umbrella, and adapted it based on an open resource created by Andrew McNeil to be used as a parabolic Wi-Fi antenna. Other than covering, hiding, and protecting the user, biofilm.net helps them communicate. The umbrella can act as an antenna for a mini server, a repeater, or a router, increasing the range while building a nomadic network that accompanies the demonstration in the streets. In the move, the network connects and disconnects organically. Demonstrators can join the virtual biofilm to chat, share files, and store them. We aim at facilitating the connection to alternative networks and at the same time acknowledge the importance of seeking autonomy in our communication technologies. Now, when internet censorship is used as a tool of repression on the part of authoritarian regimes. Self-organizing, collaborating, and communicating in a decentralized and distributed way are some of the wonderful actions of the living to break through. And that is what resist like bacteria means.
Yeah, hi everyone. During 2020, Natalia and I start to thinking of these microorganisms and the relationship between these living things and our human. And when we more deeply look into these living organisms, the more amazed we were, because they have so many amazing technologies or behavior, we can say. The one of the most inspiring things is called biofilm. Like we had in the video, that it is one of this matrix, this bacteria, they will create this covering the film, or amount of all of this collective microbiomes. And when they are reaching an amount of the whole bacteria numbers, they will enable the whole collective to act. But how can we think of this bacteria behavior to our project? There is another called current sensing. Current sensing is the key mechanism in this biofilm, or the key mechanism in this bacterial communication, that they can sense the total amount, or they can sense how many they are in a crowd or in a collective. So when they are sensing each other's, they will sensing with chemical, and they know how many they are, and they can decide the next step they can act. It's kind of a democracy way, or it's a collective way to act. And next is the bacteria resistant to antibiotics.
Yeah, so what happens with these behaviors is that when they make bacteria stronger, they also help them to develop new ways to resist to some kind of treatments and some kind of control that we humans would like to have over them. And this is something really relevant now for the medical society, I mean, for the whole humanity, but I mean, medical society is acknowledging it and making us understand what are we facing now. And it is about bacteria developing resistance to the antibiotics that we have created. Over 100 years ago. And this resistance is due also because of the misuse that we do of those antibiotics, especially in the meat industry. And what we find here in this context is that the narratives around this are so much anthropocentric, and that they always stage bacteria as enemies. Microorganisms are usually understood, if not important, they are understood as enemies, as we experienced during the pandemic with the COVID. And now the whole narratives around it are like war narratives, like we close borders, for instance, or we develop, like in terms of what the kind of articles and the kind of news that we see about bacterial resistance, we develop weapons against them and so on. And this is what we want to address with our project. And it's about the constitutive power of scientific narratives, and how actually when we discover in science, we are, and also in other knowledge forms, we are not just discovering something that is out there, but we are creating the world around us. And I think that these kind of narratives that we have now that are anthropocentric, and that has brought us to this point in which this absurd narrative or this absurd understanding of us against bacteria, bring us to this kind of crisis that we have. And actually, we understand, and as Jung presented, that bacteria that has been long before us here, and they have developed amazing technologies to become the biosphere of which we are part now. So it's not a single bacteria, it's never a single bacteria, but it's a collective, a huge collective. Actually, Lynn Margulis called them a superorganism that is this whole biosphere and biodiversity that we know now. And so while changing also these narratives and these understandings, we can also change the relations to other living organisms and the ones considered non-living up to now. And that also takes part in the way we develop our technologies. Can we go to the next one, please? And this is one of our main reference, or one of the first ones that we met when we were researching these topics, and is how to develop biology-inspired computing. Actually, this proposal about biological peer-to-peer networks goes a bit more about how to develop biological computing with bacteria as the components of those computers, of those network computers. But for us, it's also important, and personally, I think that these metaphors that goes from the computer science to the biology, thinking as organisms as computers, should be like turned the other way and start thinking our technologies and our computing as living. And this is also what we include in a way in our concept of the project.
And when we're researching this biological computing and maybe the possibilities of this biological communication that we can interpret it in our communication technologies, we found there are so much similarities between this bacteria and also the demonstration where we can say social movements or even protests. Like in these photos on the right side is the Pride parade in Taiwan in 2016 or 15. And on the left side is the biofilm, the photo of the microscope of biofilm itself. You can see the covering of the individual bacteria that can create a film to protect them. And also another quite famous protest strategy called Be Water, which is Be Wild used in Hong Kong protests and also inspired many other different locations and many other different regions that people protest in the same way with this decentralized, anonymous, and quite a lot of digital communication during these organizations. And we can see that in Hong Kong protests that people declaring that they are not having one central commanders or one central organization to manage or organize all the activities, but people react like water or like we can say like bacteria that is highly decentralized and highly autonomous, that people decide during different like online polling and also different digital platforms like Liandan and also a lot of Telegram groups, and people hiding themselves to avoiding this expose of identity to the camera surveillance, CCTVs, also from the police. And these strategies is we can see also in the Southeast Asia, like Cambodia, like Thailand, and also we can see some cases also in US, like in the Black Lives Matters protest in 2019 and 2020. And also we can see they influence a lot in Latin America, and also Natalia, maybe you can introduce the example in Colombia?
Yes, I think that's nice to mention when talking about these connections through digital and how we can get closer or further with them, that we actually started working online because we were at the university, but while the lessons were online, we will still in our regions, and that allowed us to be connected also to our local context. And I think that this project emerged from the dialogues that we had through this communication media, and that allowed us to share our experiences on each side. Yes, so what Jung just shared about Hong Kong, and at the same time, I was sharing with her what was happening in Colombia, that was a really, really hard time for social movements. They started in 2019. We are actually now in 3 years of the beginning of this movement, the 21 of November, the 21N. So this weekend, actually. And they began there, but then with the pandemic, they got stopped. But we knew that there was a lot of energy that was coming out at some point, and that actually the reasons that bring people to the streets, which is mostly about social inequality here in Colombia, but in the rest of Latin America as well, they got worse during the pandemic restrictions. So people had to go to the street, and there was this really awful situation where the police murdered Javier Ordóñez because he was outside not following the restrictions. And then the protest the next day, during the protest that occurred the next day against this police brutality, there was a massacre by the police where 13 youngs were killed because they were protesting against this. And so we kept still a lot of energy to be expressed in the streets, to be expressed this kind of this desire to be able to behave as living systems. And then we had in 2021 a huge social outbreak that lasted more than 5 months, and even today is still there. That started in the 28th of April, the 28A. And what was really important for these demonstrations was the real networks, not necessarily the digital ones, but the real networks behind the protests that allowed people to resist for such a long time. And this is all about collaboration. And for that, art played a really important role for keeping people together and as an excuse to get together and to create as a process of, caring about each other. We can go to the next one, please.
And also we have a lately quite huge example that happens now still in Iran, which called Masha Amini protest. It's also caused by a police brutality that because a woman didn't wear this covering, and people go to the street to against this the violence from the system. And we can see the local government using a really, we can say, efficient way to control this protest, that the government shut down the local internet from September, the middle of September. And we can see in the graphic that you can see the dramatic drop down of the connectivity of the region local network. And also quite the opposite example is that the situation in Ukraine. We all know that in Ukraine there is a war happens now, but many people researching about the resilience of the internet in Ukraine, that actually we didn't hear so much about there is an internet shutdown in Ukraine. There is a awareness, and there is also the risk of internet shutdown, but it haven't happened now, because you can see on the left side, Ukraine is fortunately the top 4 least concentrate market, or we can say internet providers of end users in the world, which means that they have many different internet providers, which is not the mega company, but there are many fields. And also in the infrastructure architecture, that they are not also using the same cables or the same station to collect or transfer this data. And in also another way that in Ukraine, there are many these volunteers, they are repairing these cables and also repairing this antenna, collaborate with this internet service provider. So we can see now they are still having this, the basic use of internet condition. And also another famous thing is like Elon Musk donates 20,000 of this Starlink device to Ukraine. But actually for me, it's like they are still quite centralized because Musk just declared that they are not gonna pay for the rest of the usage of the Starlink device because the U.S. government paying the bill before, and now most of the device is non-functional anymore because nobody paid the bills now. And another famous another situations in Russia, maybe Natalia can share with us.
Yes. Well, we had some conversations with different communities. Someone shared with us this process, which we bring here because it's an analog version of these creating networks and connections. And it's this activity that people go to the street and show the blank paper. And what we were told there is that they do it so they can, like someone can approach and then they can ask about what is happening, and then they can have a conversation about the context to avoid this digital communication. And also this has a reference in a previous movement, anarchist social movement in the Netherlands. And what they do also is that they expose in a way through the media how absurd is this kind of repression of the states, right? That they get arrested because they are holding this paper. So for us, what we would like to mention here and share is that we know that how diverse these strategies are and how important it is that they are diverse and they are situated. And so it's not about creating one central solution. Our project is also not about creating a product or a service that is there to be implemented and that can be solving a problem, but it's about getting together around these topics and acknowledging the importance of co-creating in the communities that need this kind of media, co-creating them and finding alternatives to the centralized options that we have now. And also that the technologies for the resistance, like these bacteria technologies that we are talking about, is not only the digital technologies or the most advanced ones that we can create, but it's actually the collaboration itself that holds together the networks to be resilient and to resist. And that's why we have thought of our project to be a co-creation process, and we develop it through co-creation workshops as well. So the first prototype we created in the new media class at UDK, where we were studying together, and that was based on the tutorial by Andrew McNeil that we shared before also. And the next one, then we called for a community to work with us. That's Mutante in Bogota. So we said, hey, we have this idea, let's prototype it together. And what we created there was one version of the server with the Pirate Box, a well-known open source hacked router. and yeah, tried in the streets in Bogota. And then we tested again. Yes, the next. We tested this server in the Anarchist Book Fair as well in Bogota. That was at the beginning of this year. And we tried how to test the umbrella and also other ways to build the cover, the metal mesh cover that creates this antenna. And most recently, we have created another one.
Yeah, most recently, the latest version of biofilm.net that we try to use Raspberry Pi as a local server and sharing hotspot with this antenna structure. And also we attach a solar power bank to provide the power. So it's a portable station that can sharing hotspot to provide this connection for people to join with their own device, such like a mobile phone or their laptop. They can access this local server. And we have a Matrix chat room that is also an open source chat room system that people can sharing their data, sharing their messages, images, videos when they connect to the hotspot. And we also have a lot of support by the Median Hosting, which was based in UDK. And we actually thinking of like more we develop this, or we don't say developing actually, because we are prototyping with each iteration, because we collaborate with different communities, with different people that they are like activists, they are hackers, they are also biologists, sociologists, and they are just normal people who interested in and associated with these strategies of resistance. And we now know that we are all based on this open source or open process or even open discussions that the technology things is not the most important things in this network, but it's the people behind the network. So we start to do this resist like bacteria encounter that it's a workshop. We invite different communities. Some of them are international communities, some of them are local communities to share their own experience and knowledge of how they resist. And now, fortunately, we had already 3 workshops in different countries. The first one was in September in Oslo Electronica in Australia. And another 2 was just finished last week. The first is Video Sonica Festival in Cali. Another is Taiwan Arts Biennial, and also in Taichung. And in this encounter, there are many different communities.
Yeah, well, we have the chance in this encounter. What was really nice for us is that we got to know a huge amount of diverse strategies, and we had a really interesting conversations even on how to create communities for those who were interested in like helping that this happens, that this emerge in their own context. So we heard experiences from Japan who shared with us that they felt that this was difficult to do there. And they got actually connected during this kind of encounter. So I think that was amazing. And also about how even in some places, these kind of digital things are not needed or are not reachable because they don't have access to, I don't know, even mobile phones or so. And how we can find analog versions for that. And I think that for us, this continues to be about how to create these new narratives that brings us closer to lifelike behavior, and that we can appreciate how these technologies of the bacteria, that we think that they are more simple because they are in the in the beginning of this tree of evolution, they are actually amazing technologies, and that we can learn from them, and that we can now be more open to design and create technologies that enable life and that embrace the diversification of life itself. And that's our invitation with the resist-like bacteria. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for letting us being part of this conference. And if you have any further questions or comments or just want to take a look more, please maybe just visit our website biofilm.net.
OK， 好，不好意思，好，非常感谢二位的这个分享，我觉得非常精彩，尤其是在你们就是真正做这种原型，并且真的去这个在各种各样不同社群里面进行实验，我觉得这样子的这种经历是非常非常宝贵的。
And we have discussed so when we are working together with some communities, when you are discussing so people have talked that technology is not the most difficult thing. And so Sharon and Natalia, would you please answer the question? Is it okay now?
And the most popular question on Slido now is there any specific communities now already implement this umbrella network? So I can share a little story of this question, because we are really emphasizing that we are not service provider. We are not doing a product that we can just give these things to other communities that they can just use it. Because as I said, there is in the middle of September, we are just finishing this Ars Electronica exhibition, and a guy from Iran reached us that he is thinking that maybe he want to have their own version, their own local version of biofilm.net in the local protester because they are reaching a high peak of tension there. And there is a danger or there is a risk that people might lose their internet connectivities. But as we considering, we still think it's not possible that we are just giving something to them because you know that they are risking their life on the streets. They are facing their situation that they spend their energies, they spend their times and even monies to against something. It's not our things. It's their situations. And if we just give them something that is not complete, is not really secured, because nobody can promise that. Even we are using SSL or other encrypted open source tools, but we still know that it's not safe for people that are risking their life for resist something. So after discussion, we write him an email back that sorry, we couldn't provide you the prototype we had. And we can only share the open source list that we using in the previous version. But really sorry that we couldn't just give you something because it might hurt you and hurt somebody who trusts these technologies. But in our position that why we building this, why we build a network, it's like we don't trust technologies. We don't trust this centralized technologies or other tools. And so is there any specific communities using this umbrella network? I think there is no, because this is, sadly, maybe we can say this is an artwork, or it's not just art, but never will be a product. So I don't know. Natalia, do you have some comments for this?
Yes, I'm sorry, I was a bit confused with the languages, but at some point I listened something that you said, and is that nobody has achieved what we have achieved, but we want to be clear that we have not achieved a mesh network. We have created some prototypes, and the most recent one, what we do is we use repeaters of a server to increase the range. And I think that's important because we acknowledge how important it is to create this kind of networks, but also we acknowledge that it is a huge challenge for us all to create this peer-to-peer encrypted and so on. So just because I heard that, I wanted to be clear that we don't want to claim that we as artists have created this kind of complex technologies.
Is there other questions?
我觉得，我看一下大家有没有什么其他的问题，或者说如果有观众有这个，OK，那有一个在那个 chat 里面问的问题，我们最后就最后一个问题之后，因为我们时间有限嘛，所以我们可能需要这个最后一个问题了，就是我就帮他读一遍吧。I really like your work. If it's a real movement, the umbrella will be used as an interconnected weapon. But it's also a physical and a police weapon, so it's very likely to be damaged. What do you think of this conflict? Do you have any plans to open workshops in mainland China at all?
Yeah, I think I don't know that it's not wise to hold the yellow umbrellas to just go to the street. It's easy to be targeted because it's so obvious and so outstanding. But why we choose yellow umbrellas is the metaphorical meanings of this object, that it's a daily object that it's normally covering or hiding us and protect us from like the water or from the sun. But in this project, we try to reverse it to not only protect, but also protect the communication and also maybe enhance the communications. So please don't bring this umbrella to the street. If you want to do some other portable network, and in the same way, maybe mesh network or also maybe other local server, you can find other antenna that is more, I can say, more efficient, more powerful, and more, I don't know, it's just industrial level of the product. But the antenna of umbrella is not a weapon and also not the things we want people to hold on the street. And another question is, do you have any plans to open workshop in mainland China? Is it possible? If so, I would like to. Yeah. Then yeah, we would like to have some conversations there for sure, because the workshop we had now, we are planning to do more. And the encounter means people exchange things and people meet. So yeah, if there is a chance, I would like to go to China and have this encounter there. Then Natalia, do you want to say something, or because this is our last questions?
Just that in the experience in the streets, like where there is an expression of life, like really not centralized, autonomous, self-organized, and so on. There is no central solution for things. And as life does, we improvise while going. So I think that's really important to know that there is no one solution.
Okay, thank you very much for this invitations. And unfortunately, Natalia and I both have to go first. And we see you in other panel. And if anyone has some questions, I'll take a look of the Slido and maybe I can answer in some other ways. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Val. Thank you. OK， 好，那我们谢谢徐荣和 Natalia 的精彩分享。就不好意思，一开始我以为 Natalia 没有来，所以就
So I thought that Natalia was not here. It's my fault, so I didn't introduce her a lot. So without further ado, let's welcome the next speaker we have with us.
那我们接下来的这个分享嘉宾叫 Gary Brandt。
So next speaker is Gary Brandt, born in California and now living in Texas as well. So for a lot of like the gourmet, culinary, and also home skin, and his mastermind of that is an active member of the current National Socialist Black Metal wave of the black metal community, and he is a solo project Gourmet and the duo Carinair. Gary Brandt fuses cheap music with the black metal in a franchised way, and uses old gaming equipment in his recordings to create chaotic yet dreamy soundscapes. So today he's going to talk about cheap zone and the black moon
of music. 那他今天很抱歉，他今天因为有别的事情没有办法过来，但他帮我们录制了影片，然后等一下我们会直接播放他录制。
He cannot be here, so but he shoot the video and then let's present this video. 朵汉 can you roll the video?
好的，因为。
对，朵涵，如果你准备好，你就可以直接分享屏幕。
我给你盯选一下。你要屏幕共享吗？
我用这个，用这个。
那你用这个共享。
大家好，因为今天 Gary Brands 不能来到现场，所以
sorry to say that Gary Brands cannot make it here today. Still, he kindly shot a video for us, and then we can roll the video. And let me briefly talk about what he meant to say, and then I'm going to give some response and commentary following this video. Let's share the screen first.
Gary 分享给我们的视频。
Now let's roll this video. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Gary Brands. First of all, thank you for having me here. Sorry I couldn't be presenting live due to other obligations with work, but thankfully I'm able to make a video here to present to you. Originally from Torrance, California. That mainly focuses on home studio recording. I record everything here, at least for the last several years, 7 years. But I've been recording and producing, mainly self-producing since 2004. I started recording through kind of the means of tape decks prior to where I am now. But I really started tackling songwriting and like composition and just like more techniques as time went on. So kind of like 2004 to like 2009 or so, I started really getting into learning a lot about recording, engineering, and producing and songwriting. And with all that, I've had various music projects over the years. Since then, but my main active projects now are Coronair, Gone Mage, and Homeskin, and then also a project called Levimir. And I'm really constantly kind of keeping myself busy with recording and writing projects and a lot of collaboration as well. So that was kind of just a brief summary of my history as a musician. I'm going to go into what I feel is the ethos of a couple niche music genres. One is chiptune and the other is black metal. For instance, one of my projects, a solo project, Gone Mage, is a fusion of those two in varying degrees. This is a combination that is not necessarily brand new, but certainly very underexplored or underutilized. So I kind of sought to really bring those two really like disparate genres together a couple of years ago with an album called Phase Out by my project Coronair. So that album itself kind of fused those sounds, but also a mixture of other things like hardcore punk, electro, a little bit of like hip hop and indie rock. So it was really kind of everything in the kitchen sink of like things that I liked, and the other member. Karna is a 2-person project. With that said, it led me to creating Gone Mage, where I mostly have aimed for more of a focus on chiptune and black metal specifically, but with room to still explore other genres and styles. I would say this all began with nostalgia. This direction comes from an appreciation for growing up in the 90s with like Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, Game Boy, and even Nintendo. I guess I kind of hold on to the limitation of 8-bit or 16-bit music, as well as the art that were presented in those mediums. They were things I've always loved and held on to. Recent years, just kind of being more at home. I currently have been working from home since March 2020. That kind of led to my memory of the past and wanting to use that nostalgia as more of an expression. That's something that's mostly never been done before, with the combination of chiptune and black metal specifically, and that sort of is also galvanized with an accompanying aesthetic by like self-imposed restrictions of using pixel art, like art styles that were used back then, instead of contemporary or like conventional means of digital art forms. So I guess let's talk about these two genres. Chiptune is essentially a form of purely electronic music, typically created for video games, most notably arcade machines of the late 70s, of course early 80s. It's essentially a part of early computer music. A band that I love called Yellow Magic Orchestra were, I believe, the first band to sample or incorporate arcade sounds in a published album. I think it was in like the late 70s. So they were pioneers of computer-based synthesized music. I won't go down like a comprehensive history of the genre, but throughout the rest of the 80s and 90s, it became a lot more popularized. Making music in this manner obviously improved technologically, especially with each new video game console having a little bit less limitations than their predecessors. This kind of went hand in hand, I guess, with what a composer could achieve. And when I say that, I guess limitation by necessity. That's something you could say is a cornerstone of chiptune. There's kind of a beauty in having that limitation because it forces you to be absolutely creative in extracting what you can express there with that limitation. That's another big element of what drew me into combining that style with, with black metal or like with punk. For the most part, those are styles that became known, I guess, or at least, started with a lot more limitation and minimalism within the confines of like rock and metal. Originally, I would say black metal was a genre defined by three bands: Venom, who essentially coined the term, Bathory, and Hellhammer, who later became Celtic Frost. In essence, it was born out of what's called speed metal and thrash metal, but much darker and much harsher, which definitely ramped up throughout the mid to late 80s and especially the 90s in terms of getting harsher and darker imagery, lyrics, everything like that. And I guess like with the touching on the limitation, it wasn't necessarily technically proficient music for the most part. Wanted to rely more on atmosphere. Now that's going more into the late 80s and 90s style of black metal. It really wanted to harness pure like energy, passion, quote unquote evil, or evil imagery at least, especially in the 90s. And throughout that decade, it kind of forked into quite a few different schools of thought and approaches, sometimes much more melodic and grandiose, symphonic even, which, kind of might have some underlying, how shall I say it, a primitive form of me combining like something electronic like chiptune with black metal, because they were using like a lot of keyboards and electronic based instruments or methods, not necessarily chiptune though. But anyway, so there was just a lot of offshoots of the style, especially going into the late 90s and the 2000s. Those more more technical styles of it, combining death metal elements along with other offshoots of other genres. Throughout the 2000s and beyond until now, it's been a very malleable genre. And I think that both chiptune and black metal kind of share that sense of malleability while simultaneously having that rooted beauty and limitation. So my process is like combining, two very limited things into something new, into something unique. And my process, I'll go into that. So my process usually starts with guitar and programming drums through the use of MIDI. This becomes my foundation for any given song, or at least, maybe 90% of anything that I make starts in this manner. Once I kind of deem the structure complete or near finished, is when I begin to embellish and fill the gaps with synth, bass, vocals, especially for Gone Mage. Although sometimes I start composing with synth, I've been starting to experiment there as a launching point through like chord progressions and then building everything else upon that, which has been pretty fun. I would say my methods are derived from analog equipment and digital software, digital means. So it's a hybrid approach. I know there are old school, I guess like naysayers against using emulations to create chiptunes specifically, which is typically recognized as fake bit as opposed to 8-bit. But I personally believe, and I think others too, especially now, that a sound for chiptune or any genre can be achieved by almost any means and not be seen as inferior if the end result is objectively similar. It's just different means to the same end or a similar end when it comes down to it. With that said, that's why I like the hybrid approach that I've been doing. I find a lot of fun in both methods. Like the analog has the absolute pure restriction of limitation. It's very kind of old school approach. And that goes back to when I was starting to record with tape decks. Like you literally only have, like the built-in mic in the tape deck or an external mic. And, you've just got stop, record, wind, fast forward. So there's definitely a beauty there in limitation, kind of forcing you to almost, get it right or approach it differently in terms of how you're composing and recording. On the flip side, the emulation or modern tools allow me to compose differently this way, at least for me, because I am using MIDI. So it's sort of like a surgical approach. Like I can see every single note individually. I can edit, recompose, rethink of what I want to do in any certain section of a song for an album, or add to it, subtract, anything like that. So I kind of get the best of both worlds. It's really about tapping into different tools in a toolbox to reach the vision that I have in my head whenever I sit down to compose a song and album. And I'm sure many others who have a similar hybrid approach would agree. With all that said, I find that the combination of these two genres, chiptune and black metal, creates a very unique sound that can be both aggressive and melodic, serious and whimsical, uplifting and contemplative. It's kind of, you're using like the pleasing retro sounds of the electronic chiptune elements, providing a contrast to the much harsher elements of black metal and or punk. And using old mediums and methods combined with updated technology is something that results in nostalgic and modern. I guess in a nutshell, this is what I consider retrofy, or to retrofy something similar to the mindset of making something lo-fi. You can check out my music at lilangisla.bandcamp.com. That's lilangisla.bandcamp.com, which hosts all of my projects and various releases. Thank you.
Thank
you, Gary, for this sharing. And now I would like to respond in a very short manner. And so this is based on my communication with Gary Brandt about the theme of the annual meeting and his create. So this is a summary of our talk or communication 6 points. First, why I think Gary Brandt have attracted me. And so I think he is doing something very different. That is, he is combining black metal and chiptune, and these two genres are ideologically the contrast with each other. And black metal is usually right wing, while behind chiptune there is hack culture. But Gary Brandt have found a commonality between them. That is the limitation. Early stage black metal originated from the speed and the heavy metal, and so it's most simplified, and the sound is always like self-corrosive, and so the early time chiptune, and later we are going to talk about first generation chiptune, and so it heavily rely on the hardware, and such kind of equipment usually is limited by technology. Usually it is kind of technology with limitation. And so we can talk about third generation of 3 generations of chiptune. And so first, the first generation chiptune musician, they think that based on the limitation of the platform, the musicians, care less about fake bit, and they regarded themselves more as a kind of a sound artist instead of a programmer, and they do not regard themselves in those past perspectives. So they focus more on music instead of chip, or whether they needed to. They had to use digital technology to make the music. And so their creation not only come from analog equipment like hardware, which is similar to traditional chiptune, and also they would also use MIDI, such kind of a digital technology. Actually, about Fitbit debate, actually, you can see Gary just now was protecting Fitbit. He is a typical third generation musician, a chiptune musician. So at the same time, he used management and digital software. And a debate about Fitbit is that when chiptune do not have a technology platform to rely on, then it's more bundled together with video game, and it's this kind of new wave of culture made people a lot of neglected the fact that at the beginning, the chiptune is based on a limited technical platform. If we have to define chiptune, that is to use the tone of 1980s chiptune, but we don't use those technology to realize that. Instead, we use the current sampler and sequencer synthesizer. Now, let's look at the two stages of black metal and why we say that actually together with chiptune, they are contrast to each other ideologically. In the early stage, especially 1990s black metal, basically it was right wing. It's based on the German ethnicity supremacy and also the blind protection of the local culture and the nationalism born out of it. And so the black metal, which the belief in this kind of black metal is usually called NSBM, National Socialist Black Metal. And just now we mentioned Gary Brandt's. In the current wave, he is one member of the anti-NSBM musician. So naturally, we will think of the current black metal. You can see now it is integrating with different kinds of genres. Of course, this is just from technology perspective. In music, it isn't not afraid of integrating with other music, and they're not afraid being tainted by other genres. And but we can see a lot of fundamentalist black metal musician, they think such kind of musician is a kind of hipster. And so there is a contrast of chipster and hipster here. So reminded us about integration of the genres and the contrast in ideology. What does it represent? Number 5, the community. So first, black metal community. You can see just now we talk about the anti-NSBM wave. For a long time, the right wing have occupied in culture, in literature, their position, but the left wing usually just complained and conducting some verbal criticism. But I think the most important thing is to fight back, right?
So Brucer is a digital librarian, as quoted by his own terms, and he's also a computer engineer and also entrepreneur as well. So at the same time, and also the Alexon co-founder is him as well. So at the same time, we are the founder of the Internet Archive as well. And also he has been inducted into the Hall of Fame and also the Formation of Americans Engineering Society as well. And also he has become the board member of a lot of foundations as well. So, but most importantly, I don't need to introduce him to everyone. Now let's ask Brucer to do the presentation for everyone. Now, the title of his presentation would be, let lock in the web open. I'm going to share the screen and ask Brucer to present. Thank you.
Yeah, with the slideshow. Yep, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. This is wonderful to be here. And I love that this conversation is not about Web3, but is about P2P in the broad sense, that people to people, peer to peer, without centralization and without maybe some of the finance shams that are sort of going on right now in Web3. So I would like to bring up our progress on trying to bring up a decentralized web. Can we make a web that is decentralized that will serve us better? First, to say just a little bit about the Internet Archive, nonprofit library. I gave a tour earlier. This is the picture of the outside of the building and our motto, universal access to all knowledge. We have a lot of software, now 790,000 software titles. We have lots of moving images, 5 million, still need more. Audio recordings of music and radio and podcasts and all sorts of things. Television news, recording now Russian, Ukrainian, and Belarus. They're making those available on the Internet Archive as well as the United States television news, so that people can understand more of what is going on. We've digitized about 6 million books. We have lots and lots of web pages. We are probably best known for the Wayback Machine. It's 99 plus petabytes. We get maybe 2 million users to the Internet Archive websites, and about 5 million people using the Internet Archive every day. And it's about the 300th most popular website. Anyway, that's the Internet Archive. So what do we want to have happen? We want to lock the web open. We want to make it so that individuals, whether they're billionaires or countries, cannot play inappropriate roles for having our internet work for us, so that it should be more in control of individual people and fewer billionaires, central corporations, and large countries to go and say what should be said, what shouldn't be said, how we should interact, who gets to know about it. Let's build a decentralized web that has our values built into the center of it. Larry Lessig, my hero, he said, code is law. So we have a World Wide Web that is not serving us well. And I'd say one of the reasons why it has come to pass is we did not bake our values into the code itself. We can go and make it so that the First Amendment of the United States, freedom of the press, privacy can be baked into the code itself. How do we do that? The Internet Archive has been archiving the World Wide Web for now 26 years. So we've seen many of the changes and can analyze the changes that have been going on from Web 1, where we had Wikipedia and people going and taking responsibility for their own publications and presence on the web, to
being more feeds, so that we're all locked into these large platform players. And given that the problems at Twitter, we're starting to be able to have more. But I want to go back to the old days. We want to go forward so that it even works better. The Internet Archive is meant to be open, but is being blocked in other parts of the world. Sometimes in Russia, always in China, and different countries block the Internet Archive and the whole library with all of the books, often because just a few videos are offensive to a government, so they'll block it for hundreds of millions of people. So Internet and open access to information is not guaranteed in the current World Wide Web. Spying is censorship. That we've seen people having trouble with what they are reading and writing is going to the wrong people, or at least surprising people. So we have people are then pulling back, and that is not the right thing to do. We should have systems that encourage people to be everything that they are, and in the right context with their friends, with their acquaintances. So what do we want? We want also a World Wide Web that is fun. So we want a more private, we want a more robust internet, and we still want a fun internet. Can we build those things into the next generation of code? Privacy, robustness, and still fun. Let's build a decentralized web that has those characteristics: reliable, private, and fun. So what do we mean by decentralized? So decentralized in the World Wide Web in many ways is not decentralized. So you say that has many different servers, but the internet itself, the underlying plumbing, is in the sense that you do not need permission to plug in to start trading packets. So you can go and make a system that is decentralized, permissionless, to go and plug into. The world sense that if your website or somebody's website goes down, that's the only copy. That's not a very robust system. You can't route around that to find it someplace else because it only exists in web domain. That's what a URL is, so limited. So can we go and build something more decentralized? Can something even like, and AWS in some sense is more decentralized because they can push out websites to be closer to people and in multiple places, but it's still controlled by one corporation. So can we go and have servers live in many places so that when you're getting a web page, it's coming from everywhere and nowhere, peer-to-peer? So can it come from other people's web browsers that have read it? Can it come from many different places? And you have a coherent web experience. Can we make it private so that you do not have to feel like you are being watched all the time? And the answer is yes, with the newer technologies in cryptography, newer in the sense that it wasn't available to Tim Berners-Lee, but we can go and make it work. We can also make it robust. What if we made a World Wide Web that operated more like Git, in the sense that if a website goes wrong, you can go and have a past version of it? The World Wide Web has been archived by the Internet Archive, but it's only the snapshots of what the web looks like, not how it operates. Can we go and take websites with databases and interaction and have those live in multiple places? Can you snapshot them? Can you make a World Wide Web that has a memory? Can you make it so that rich websites can live forever, even after the original owner of the domain is gone? That's what libraries have always done with books that people have published. They put it on the shelf so that other people can go and learn. But now that the equivalent of a book is a website that has interaction, can we go and build something that's sophisticated? This is a call for this. And I'm hoping that you're thinking how you can help make these technologies. And I'll say a little bit of where we're going. If we're going to fix some things of the World Wide Web, I think we should make it possible for people to make money by publishing on the web, so that if you have a book that you would like to sell, you can sell it and then people can download it. Yes, they can rip it off and move it around again, but there's an easy way to go and put money back into the creator's hands. Right now, that's very difficult. You have to put it on Amazon or on iTunes or Shopify, all great services in their parts, but it's again centralized, and it takes the power away from individuals to control what it is they're doing with others. So what do we now have? Well, we've got some interesting technologies to be able to play with. We've got JavaScript to make this new web out of. We've got cryptography. We have blockchain technology and Bitcoin, all of different cryptos. So there are people making real progress on peer-to-peer decentralized systems. But let's try to define what we're trying to do. How about a bold goal? How about a WordPress, but decentralized, right? So WordPress, so you can set up a blog, but it doesn't live anywhere in particular, so that you can go and have different people that can be administrators and have updates and blogs. Can we make that work? Something simple like a WordPress, but decentralized. But people working in the next steps, which is, can we build a Twitter plus Facebook, but decentralized? And we've seen some of these things, and even beyond sort of the Mastodon type of technologies, but decentralized, so that we're not always typing all of our key documents into a Google server. A Tesla, a car, right? My wife bought one of these. They're completely great, but they report back to home. Everything you do, you tap on the gas pedal, that's recorded and sent back. It's a connected device. So there's many advantages to that. So we don't want to lose those advantages, but can we make it decentralized under our own control, under our own values? What do we want by decentralized WordPress? We want it to work in a normal browser. We want it to have good names. We want it to be fast. We want it to be fun, to be able to post and comment. If we really do well, we want payments and tips, and we want versions in an archive. Well, how are we doing? Well, JavaScript as an operating system, a global web operating system, is doing very well. You can go and download JavaScript and run whole IBM PCs, old Macintoshes inside your browser. So if it can go and run those older computers, they can talk to others of these computers using WebRTC. We can have a virtual operating system on top of the World Wide Web. That's interesting. With WASM, it's even getting better, but we've now gotten an ability to go and download code, run it decentralized, and then be able to communicate between those instances with WebRTC to be able to do this peer-to-peer, so that if I read a web page from a peer-to-peer world, I can go and serve it to another web browser of somebody that might want it. So check, we've got it. Just to give a quick demo, we put my blog, actually many years ago now, into IPFS, such that it's actually being served with JavaScript out of IPFS. And you can click around on it, and it kind of works. So that's kind of fun that we've been able to get this to work. Let's see if I can get back to my. Also, we built a technology for making our Internet Archive itself, archive.org, start to get it to be peer-to-peer oriented. So dweb.archive.org you can go to. It's using HTTP, WebTorrent, the IPFS right now is flaky, so it's not working, and Gun for a database. And you can go and be able to see some things like movies from the Internet Archive. And it's now getting it from WebTorrent from other people that have this particular video. So we're starting to see, even we can make an Internet Archive, but decentralized in the sense that it can come from everywhere and nowhere. So easy name systems, there's Namecoin. I think we really have not really gotten that one to work. There are some new decentralized DNS technologies, but so maybe it's all, then I don't know about it, but we still have these long, weird numbers to deal with. Performance. How do we go and have it so this open world so that it's snappy? That's again something we don't really hit. So it's possible to do. So it's peer-to-peer. So in other words, this page can come from many, many different places and it kind of come together as fast as if we're coming from a centralized place. But it's not quite done yet. The Internet Archive is interested in being a node, a high-speed node, to be a replica of other people's decentralized tech, data to be able to serve in this way. And how do they do updates is kind of a difficult task in some of these systems of mutable torrents or mutable IPFS nodes, but smart people are working on it. They say that it's coming or it's here. So decentralized identity system. I kind of like using the same crypto pairs that we have on our wallets as our identities, but because they can be pseudonymous and they have all the chains, so you can invent as many as you want, or you can build one that has a reputation. For almost everything we do, there's a lot of people working on identity where it really requires it being touching a person. But for most of the World Wide Web, we really don't need to actually know who it is. Sometimes we want to be able to build a reputation, so we want to have recurring user identities, but it does not have to be tied to people. So we can have a WordPress, but decentralized. So that's cool. And some of this stuff is really coming along. So it can be reliable, private, and fun. The Internet Archive has been working with Filecoin and storage, with a J, storage, and doing another thing than just having our website, but decentralized, but taking our data and putting it into these decentralized storage technologies as opposed to those servers that you see upstairs. So they'll be in those servers, but what happens if those go away? Wouldn't it be great to have other libraries be able to have copies of collections of the Internet Archive that can go and be served? And we're now uploading, I think we've peaked at 10 terabytes a day into Filecoin, and I'm not sure where it is right now with storage with a J, but it's also going terabytes, and we're low petabytes at this point. So our goal here is to lock the web open. Peer-to-peer technologies are absolutely crucial towards keeping our cultural heritage alive. The works that we're doing to have live not just in one place, but many places, and have that all work. Together, we can build this. It's technologically difficult. Decentralized technologies are harder than centralized technologies, but I think we've seen now over and over and over again in the last 10 years, and now even really recently, why we're going to need to invest in a next generation World Wide Web. Fortunately, we've got all the pieces, and we have wonderful people that are interested in building this, and they're coming together in things like DWeb camps and summits that are happening around the world. So thank you very much, and I hope there's some time for questions.
Yes. Yeah, let me just try to, just one sec. So I think we have a question already, like from we have a question already asking. So basically, if they're interested, how can they participate in the Internet Archive, or can they work for you guys, or how?
Yes.
So yeah, how?
Well, the best thing is to don't work for us, but to work on the same projects as we are and contribute. We are about 100 people. We're located around the world. We are looking for really good technology people. We're trying to get things to work better and better in many places. We're growing in Canada, particularly, but it's not boom times, as you know. Sort of looks like there's going to be clouds on the horizon for the economy. So we're trying to, if you can keep working in your current company and then work on some of these projects in collaboration with the Internet Archive, please do. A way of participating is just go to archive.org and hit upload, and just try uploading something to the Internet Archive. If you're inside China, it's probably blocked. So which is too bad. So sorry about that. Maybe there's ways that we can try to find things in the Internet Archive that can work in the Chinese system without causing a great deal of consternation, and we can bridge some of those materials.
All right, thank you so much for the answer. And then I think there's another, yeah, I think there's another question from the chat.
We know that 2 of the founders of Z Library were recently arrested. Oh, I didn't hear that. And I feel that you both share the same vision of universal access to all knowledge. So I'm curious, as you see the similarities and differences between Z Library and the Internet Archive. Did the Internet Archive encounter any pressure from the government? I'm not really familiar with Z Library. I had to look it up recently when they shut down the domain. I guess it's a kind of a front end on Library Genesis or Sci-Hub. The Internet Archive is quite different in that it is it also has a goal of universal access to all knowledge. But how we've been trying to do it is a little bit differently. The Internet Archive, for instance, with books, we buy the books and we digitize the books and make them available through interlibrary loan. We digitize them for the blind and dyslexic. We make them available for machine learning, but in very controlled ways. The web pages are freely available, but the books that are modern books, if they're, for instance, within the last 5 years, we don't really make them available at all. And we just make ones older than that available, say, one reader at a time with something that's called controlled digital lending, which is really quite a very restrictive, not very good user experience, but it is what the publishers use for their in-print books. When they're doing their Netflix of books systems, we use the same things that the publishers does. So we have the same goals maybe, but I think we're trying to get at it as a much more sort of traditional library kind of way. But let's find paths forward for open access materials. Let's have it go everywhere. And good news is the United States government just mandated that federally funded research, the papers that come out of federally funded research, will be made available immediately. I think it has a couple years to roll out, but there won't be a time delay between writing it and making it available publicly, which is a big boon for the open access world.
Okay, thank you so much for the answer. And then I think we have like a question on Slido. Just one sec. Let me see if I can click on it. Yep. Just one sec. Yep. So according to Peng An, I noticed that IA is using IPFS,
yes,
which is also the basis for a structure like NFT that emphasizes exclusive rights and speculative value. How do we ensure that decentralized technology moves towards the openness we expect rather than a more closed and profit-seeking system?
Good question. Right. How do we go and make all this stuff work? So yes, there's been a great deal of momentum between, I think really because of the big success of Bitcoin and ups and downs of all of that. And these NFTs, which frankly, I don't own any. I'm not quite sure what even owning one. Anyway, so I kind of like the old style transaction system. Can we make something like Alipay but open? Can we for just doing transactions and payments? For most of the materials that we want to read, I think that we've seen some systems really work better, which is kind of writers pay, whether it's putting things in archive with an X or Public Library of Science. Government documents are all public domain in the United States, and a lot of the democracies around the world go and make things available. So I think we have to go and push very hard on the open. That doesn't mean that some people aren't going to want to get paid for things, and making it possible for people to be paid, I think is a good thing. But there's I saw this announcement by a major textbook publisher that they're excited about NFTs because it will restrict people's ability to sell used copies of textbooks, which is absolutely going in the wrong direction. I guess shouldn't be too surprising that publishers want to do this, but I think we should not go in that direction. So I guess I'm concurring with the questioner here.
Okay, thank you so much. I guess, do you guys have any other questions? If not, I think we can move on. And then thank you so much for.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And please visit the Internet Archive virtually, in person. And I look forward to coming back to China.
Wow.
Which has not been that easy, of course, with the pandemic, and also, well, just geopolitical changes.
When was your last trip to China?
2020 in Suzhou.
Oh wow!
Yes, there's a big project to digitize Chinese books and make them available, because in China there's actually positive laws towards this controlled digital lending idea within the universities. It's how the Million Books Project worked in China, and we were part of that back to now 20 years ago now. So there was much more cooperation, and let's make sure there's cooperation again.
Okay, thank you so very much, Brewster, and for giving us the annual value for hosting our conference.
All yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And also, thanks, Wendy, for helping us all along. I mean, yeah, just it's a great pleasure to be here. To visiting Internet Archive in person. It's just different from visiting here virtually, because you can see all the books and all the old devices. It's just so amazing, guys. Just if you possible, just please come to San Francisco and then visit yourself. And yeah, thanks so much for the great speech by Brewster. And then I think we can just move on. And yeah, let me just stop sharing. I don't know. Should I go with English or I don't know? Okay. Okay, but we do have a interpreter, so okay. Okay. 那接下来我们邀请
Okay, without further ado, let's welcome the next presenter, so Livid, and the Chinese name is Liu Xin. So for Livid, you may not understand who Livid is. Livid is a famous name. So this is just like a V2EX, actually on V2EX.com. The creator is Livid Yu. So V2EX.com is kind of an online community of creative workers, and V2EX is an online community of startup designer developers and creative people. And goal of the community is to create a great place to discuss technical details. So this is about gather together engineers, developers, and programmers and designers. So this is a place where people can have the freedom to talk about technical thinkings and their ideas. This is an amazing community ever since year 2010, and they were already operating right now. There are hundreds of millions of users online. So today, Livid is going to present to you something related to V2X or something different compared with that. It's kind of a different speech as well. So the topic is on how do we have a fully owned cyberspace as well. So now think about so the best way to communicate ideas is the internet, but how on the internet can we have a fully controlled cyberspace of ours? So without ado, let's welcome Livid to open up all the different possibilities from early on the FTP, integer website, and all different kinds of cloud services, and also the distributed network based on a P2P technology. Welcome, Livid, to say a few words about what Livid is thinking and envision for the future. So cyberspace of your own, does it look like? Let's welcome Livid. Welcome, Livid. Hello, everyone. My name is Liu Xin. I'm the founder of V2EX.com. So today I feel super excited to have this opportunity to share some information with everyone, to talk about the web, decentralized web, some interesting anecdotes as well. So now let me start sharing my screen. Okay. So when we were talking about decentralized web, as a matter of fact, it's a very abstract concept. So as a matter of fact, when we first started from 1991, the internet until right now, 30 years have already passed. So when we are confronted with such a very complex topic, as a matter of fact, I think we should go back to its very early origin to look at in its early days how our World Wide Web started from like a humble existence of a computer like this one in 1991 to the decentralized web, which is described by Bruce, and then how can we open our eyes to some interesting technologies and technical details. And back in the year 1991, and in Europe, in like the nuclear physics laboratory, Tim Berners-Lee, his own computer is looking exactly like this one. And on this computer, he's playing with a lot of different ideas. The first server, web server has been invented, and also the editor of this kind has been invented. So think about actually the earliest web was being run and operated on a personal computer and a PC like this one, because it's like a server. So as a matter of fact, so in the label of this one, so his machine is a server. That was back in the year 1991, the first website and running on first next computer. So that was the back then browser and how it looked like in the back days. Think about the browser back in those days. If you ever had the intention to develop a website like this one, and then at the early 2000, and then if you are a web browser back then, you have heard of the words called like the personal page of the NetEase. And basically, so back then when we were listening to them, thinking about the first web server, so this is basically making sure that on the computer, there is a folder and then all the files and photos and images in the file was exactly looking like this. Back then, the structure of your folder was exactly like this one as I presented to you right now. So like actually you find that port 80 has been providing some services, and then you bundle that to address, and then others can view it. Well, the earliest format of personal website, when you want to have your personal website in the first place, you have to use a tool or something. Say just like front page by Microsoft to develop a website like this. And then so there will be a bunch of like photos, HTML documents and FTP space for you to transfer that into something like a NetEase, like a personal like a website, and then you send your personal domain name to someone else who is going to access your content and view your content. So this is like the era of the Web 1.0 era. So back then, most of the time you find that it was a static one. So what I mean is that because it's a bunch of files or something through the bunch of files from your own computer, you are transferring that to a server and then onto the server. So it's kind of being accessible to other end users and targeted audience or something. But following that, people want to see more of that. I think they say in the same time. So like, for example, like a GeoCity is quite like a NetEase, a personal website or something, web page. So you might have been wondering, so I'm using the Internet Archive when I'm trying to find some photos of the website like 20 years ago or something. So this is called a Wayback Machine, a feature and function of the Internet Archive. That is to say that if you ever are interested in understanding how each different website was looking like 20 years back, you can use this one to see what it looked like back then, about several decades ago. And then later on, what people want the most is like this one. So what they want is to see that. So on the internet, they can leave some messages with someone or to do some interaction. So gradually, at the beginning of the year 2000, we started to hear one thing. So it talked about Web 2.0. So Web 2.0 from a lot of Chinese users. You might be hearing of one famous website called Douban.com. And then in 2005, So in the Web 2.0, this is the most typical website in Web 2.0. Let's think about Web 2.0. So what they do fundamentally, it's by its very nature, you'll find that back in the era of Web 1.0, we are using a localized computer, a bunch of files, and transfer that into servers, and you can visit the server to see the files, right? But following that, into the era of Web 2.0, what can it achieve is that you're still visiting our website, still behind this, there are not a lot of a bunch of files, but instead, so you find that the server can access a database and then they can render something which look like a bunch of files, but this is a dynamic results. So what we see is that from the Web 1.0 to the 2.0, what is the biggest change before and after? So for the Web 2.0 companies, they figured out a way of which to mention that in a very large, ever-evolving data center, you can put in a database, and the database based on some rules and can be opened for everyone to write something, to read something in there. Well, that is the time when there are a lot of different opportunities and possibilities as well, where people can gather together, leave comments on restaurants and the music or something, and to share some photos together, and the photos and based on the tag and based on some other information and meta information, it can be fused and converted together. And behind this, we can see there are some companies behind this, of which everyone is trying the best they can do to manage a super large database, of which everyone can read it and can write things in here. Of course, this has created a lot of interesting applications as well, but as a matter of fact, you'll find that in this very effectiveness, these are the gatekeeper of this content are those companies. Companies are gatekeepers of this content. So that's why you find that the Douban news and also payment news or something. So as long as there are something where you can allow the users to write something onto it, when it grows to a certain stage, and then it will run into some horror events, especially here in mainland China. So the reason for that is because I think about this thing, and I think the architecture behind is like a Douban.com. They maintain the database. So if ever there is someone who wants to they cancel or delete something from the database, the most shortcut is to find Douban and give some pressure to Douban, and the things will be gone. But think about it, when those companies, no matter the China Douban or the Facebook and Twitter in the US, if they like it or not, effectively. So they are expected to perform the role as a gatekeeper of the content, no matter if they think it's the right thing or wrong thing to do. But I think on this platform, users will feel very unsafe because there's no way for them to understand. I write one thing here today, but tomorrow will be gone, or due to whatever reasons, maybe canceled, deleted by some companies or something, or they're hacked into or something. It's all possible or something. So that's why just now when we were having a discussion, we're talking about the decentralized web, this is exactly what we are confronted with. So think about the decentralized web. The beauty about it is to make sure that the previous issue can be addressed and the answer can be provided for that. So if you ask me to talk about for decentralized web, so what it is, and maybe this is gonna be a very abstract or maybe something, you will think that is a very abstract or something. I'm just trying to give you a demo so that the picture is all very clear. If you are a Twitter follower and visit Twitter a lot, you may have already seen this one. It's called Vitalik.eth. So think about it. Behind this, there is a website behind it. So that is to say that for the other .eth kind of a username has a website behind it. So if you really want to visit that on a very ordinary browser, and then you can add a .limo. But think about the .eth type of website compared with our .com kind of a website. What's the difference between the two? So I think behind this, it's not like that you are pointed that or connected that with a server. So I think it's very abstract, right? So I'm trying to make it more concrete for you. So let me try to give you one more case in point. Yes, got it. So if you're on Twitter or you have already realized the .eth and also username like this one, .eth, but when you see it for the first time, you might be wondering, wow, so it looks like a domain name, but what it is. So as a matter of fact, it could be used as a domain name and could be used as such. Say, actually, if you didn't have any plugin, you have just a naked browser, and then if you can open it, it will look like this one. But as a matter of fact, so if you're using some right tools and then say, for example, like what I said before, so if you and also following the .eth and or using the Limo, and then you can ETH website. And how does it compare to the .com website? It's a very different in the sense that the .com kind of website behind this, right? Well, the new type of a website, so the new domain based on the decentralized blockchain is actually behind this. It's pointing to something like ITFS technology. So the ITFS, so think about it. If you ask me to do a very simple explanation of what it is, the IPFS, so you have to use the 训练 or BT, right?
So in BT, in downloading, well, the downloading approach is there is a long string, for example, mag like the link. And so that is the actually the feature code of what you want to download. If you have the string, then you put it under for example, in the BT software, then you will be able to find the contents behind it. Well, ITFS technology is an upgraded, known as HT technology. And so you can build a website, and a website will have a long string of ID, and you can put the long string into your domain name, .edh domain name. You may ask, compared with our traditional way of building a website, what's different? Okay, so you see the difference lies in the fact that our traditional website, for example, for here, we mentioned just now, for example, this is European Nuclear Lab website. And the traditional website, all the domains, if you look at the domain owners, behind that, it's like tree-like structure. It's layer by layer. And from the restaurant to the administrator office, you will see behind that, the ultimate owner is the country. That is the traditional domain name. Even if you register that, you owned the domain name, but you find behind the domain, ultimately, eventually, the owner usually was a sovereign country, including .com. The eventual owner is also United States. It's also a country. Well, new blockchain-based domain, what it actually do or does, like .eth, behind it, it is a smart contract, a transaction record under the blockchain. While the whole blockchain, the only thing it does is to keep the records. While the whole network belongs to nobody, belongs to no company. There is no single company or single individual can say, okay, today I want to close Bitcoin, or today I want to close Ethereum. It's impossible. So based on this infrastructure, you register a domain like .eth. This domain, from cryptography perspective, something fully belongs to you. And then for your domain, you can direct that to a certain string of contents. The string of contents just describe the hash of a folder So this thing doesn't need to be on a server, because traditional server, the IP address behind it, layer by layer structure, eventually there is a owner. The owner may probably be a sovereign country too. So just now we said so much. You may think about, okay, how can I own Vitali.eth website, a website like that? Just now we mentioned a lot about IPFS technology. Right now, if in Google you search how to make a website with IPFS, so you may see, for example, this is the first result in Google. And so it describes what the technology is. And you have to download a IPFS desktop to install it, to operate it. And then you can build a static website through it. Then you take the static website. If you get the content IP, and then other people can visit it. And to this step, maybe most people will give up already, would have given up a long time ago, because most people haven't used this part of the technology. So when we are discussing decentralized web now, that's why we say it is still early stage, because when we found that if you want to do anything on decentralized web, if you want to search a tutorial like this, you may see this screen. But under IPFS, if you want to release hello world, and then this is, you need to type in. And okay, just now I have talked such a lot. So is it possible to make it more simplified? So last year at this time, I was thinking about this. That is, is it possible to make this pile of this pile, turn that into a native app like this. So under macOS, then you can build a website. So this is something we want to do. And this is the post I just sent. After you clicked on it, you copy the contents, the code of the contents, and then you get to another computer. Then we paste it here. Yeah. So we directly get the demo we did now in the other computer. This is the P2 network. So after I have written something here, I copied the IPNS and we follow the IPNS on this computer, and then I get the content. And so in the middle, there is no server at all. So these two computers directly find each other. And to go a step further, for this kind of IPNS, I can bundle it into a .eth domaining. And then I can own such a website like this. Well, in this whole experience, you can see in this whole structure, what I demoed just now, no part relies on a big corporation server or cloud at all. And what it used is the generator of a local static website. After we have generated that, you can release that into IPFS network, and then bundle it with your .eth domain. And during this process, no link is controlled by any company or any individual. And that is, what you write can only be deleted by yourself, nobody else. Okay, now let me return to what we were at just now. So just now, Internet Archounder Brewster, he mentioned the decentralized web. This is one way of realizing it. And of course, there might be a lot of details involved. And in a short period of time today, it is impossible to cover all of them. So now I'd like to return the time to the host, Louis, and so that we can answer some questions. Okay, 刘易斯. Hello? Okay. Okay, sorry. Thank you, David, for your sharing. I think maybe a lot of fellow students are thinking what it can do ultimately. I think Livid has demoed to us or demonstrated a very simple way to build our personal website. You don't need to do anything. You only need to download the MicroS app or app. And so every content you created through IPFS, it can be spread to anyone in a P2P manner. And for example, he opened a node just now, and you found all the contents have been transferred. It's not by rocket science. It's just depending on IPFS technology, and all the contents are transferred through IPFS technology to another machine, to another computer. And so based on what they built, the planet, you can own your website, individual website, and it does not exist in a centralized server on the internet. Everything is stored or saved locally. Now let's check what are the questions now. Okay, here there is a question from Ted. After Google Reader was closed in 2013, and so there are lessons learned. Google 2013年
absorbed by the platform, and the planet looks like a blockchain generation, RSS writer and reader using IPFS again. I think if we want people to regain data ownership or return to the RSS era, the dilemma seems to be not only at the technical and the database level, but also that the platform is more like a tribe and a comfort zone for the users. Is this a problem you encounter in the process of communicating with users?
Yeah, I think this this question first, it gave a very accurate definition of what it is. Yeah, thank you. I think it's a very accurate definition. It's a blockchain generation RSS writer and the reader using IPFS. So now we are talking about the platform and the comfort zone. Actually, the really comfort from platform is that those platform, not only they are really good at connecting people, they actually also helping a lot of people making a lot of money. That's why so many great content that you can not only find on YouTube or on TikTok is because those platforms are actually helping people making money so that they can pay bills. Right now, when we are talking about this new decentralized web, I see the biggest problem is actually it's not helping people to making money. We haven't been there yet. This new platform, those new technologies, those experiences are still at a quite early stage, and we need to try to see that if we can build something that can actually help people make money. on this platform. Then we can have great content, but in a fully decentralized way. Yeah, so for example, if we can make Planet, the content creators on Planet to receive payment directly from their fans, from their audience, without relying on a credit card processor like Stripe or Visa, then we are essentially enabling a new model, a permissionless model of Patreon OnlyFans, so that those content creators, they can deliver their content directly to their fans, to their audience, without the interference from a middleman, from a platform. They can deliver their content directly. And the thing that we don't have yet is that we need to enable those content creators, they can receive money directly from their supporter. Or those great content, they will just stay on YouTube, stay on TikTok, because that's how their life got supported on those platforms. Yeah.
OK， 好，谢谢 Levin。如果就是大家还有什么其他问题的话，请可以在我们的那个 Slido， 或者说直接在这个 chat 里面直接来问出来。那如果大家暂时没有什么其他问题的话，那我准备进入到我们第5位讲者，也是我们最后一位讲者的这个演讲了。那我们最后一位讲者，他叫做 it's gonna be you. Okay, I'm talking about you now. Sorry.
The last speaker's name is Mai Ishikawa Sutton. Sutton is an organizer, promoter, and also editor, and also a writer who is focusing on the digital commons at the same time, co-founding a lot of very excellent organizations at the same time, and projects as well, Compost, and also the Commons Network Fellow as well. So her work sits at the intersection of technology and solidarity economy. Ever since spring 2019, she has been involved with the Internet Archive's work on organizing conversations and DWeb, decentralized web, organizing conversations, resources, and events. And she is one of the original stewards of the DWeb principles. So here today, she's going to talk about the core of the brain, and for the trust and care and game, and bring that to the point-to-point network. So you can see the English title. You can refer to that as well. So for this lecture, who is going to use a digital network technology to improve the user experiences, talking about the DWeb principles, and also in order to establish equity and a justice-oriented organization, what are the things for us? So the mutually respect and the trust culture, why is it the prerequisite of this movement, the free software movement, and also, or the other different movements, acquiring knowledges and platforms, there are some takeaway positives and negatives, and success and failure, so that we can use a very responsible, distributed, and also the very elastic and flexible organization to make sure that over the past 10 years, organizing things, and then throughout her past experiences, having a lot of a culture for embracing the free and just and fair and flexible technology. She's going to deep dive into her views and vision of all those things. Without further ado, so let's welcome our speaker to come to the stage to do the presentation. So then are ready? Thank you.
Just one second. Okay, there we go. I think we can. 稍等，我来 share screen.
Okay, great. Hello, welcome. Thank you everybody for being here. Thank you, Yusi, for the introduction. Am I ready to go? Oh yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for tuning in. The title of my talk is Head and the Heart, Embedding Trust, Care, and Play into the Peer-to-Peer Decentralized Web. This is my first time speaking at the annual conference for Network Society. And let me give you a little summary of where we're going to go for the next 30 minutes. I'm going to make sure I time myself. So I'm going to give you a little brief introduction about my background, the work that I've been doing, the way that my shift in thinking around technology and innovation has informed my organizing and writing for the past couple of years, and then talk about some 3 nested approaches to how we can embed mutual care, trust, and play into the decentralized web. And I'm actually really happy that I follow the previous 2 speakers who gave us a really great detailed tech view into how the decentralized web can work. I'm really going to be sort of focusing on the fleshy human side of that equation. And so here we go. So this is me when I'm 4. This is me pressing my face onto the glass. I feel like for the past couple of years, the way that I've been involved in technology has sort of been like this. I like have my face pressed against the glass in the way that I felt like doing policy work with the Electronic Frontier Foundation and some writing about the digital commons and working at the public library in Oakland, that I was kind of like on the outside a bit in thinking about how the technology is built. But more recently, kind of like thinking about how can I help shape the ways in which people are even approaching innovation and the ways they're building technology. So over the last 10 plus years that I've been thinking about technology and social justice and digital commoning, what I've really come to realize is technology is never neutral. It's always an extension of ourselves, both in the ways that we are good to each other. If you look at, YouTube or TikTok or any, social media platform, you can see just the most beautiful, interesting things of humanity, right? Or look at the archive and look at the past and see, how technologies have been used to celebrate the things that are human about us. But at the same time, of course, it's also embedded with our biases, with the ways that we organize ourselves socioeconomically, and paying attention to the ways that technology is a tool and not something that is an inherent good in itself, I think is something that I really think about a lot. And in that, I think about, the digital commons. If we're going to have technology and it's not neutral, why not make it very biased towards treating each other well and having organizations where we're making those relationships explicit in the ways that we want to, see each other as equals, have fun, all the great things that we want out of technology that connects us. And so what are the digital commons? So digital means just operated or done with the fingers. Obviously, it's now we kind of just associate it with like the computer screens that we're looking at, the phones, the any number of kind of like tools in which we access information, interact with information, but really fundamentally just things that are done with our fingers. And commons. So oftentimes people think about the commons as like the material, like water that we share and air. But with commons thinking, David Bollier is a leading thinker on commoning. He defines it as a social system for the long-term stewardship of resources that preserves shared values and community identity. And so really, more recently, commoning, and actually always, it's really been about the social systems. It's about the humans that are taking care of the thing that they are coming around to take care of together. Eleanor Ostrom was a professor at Indiana University and Arizona University who was the first woman Nobel Prize winner for economics in her work on economic governance and researching what she called common pool resources, or commons. and define the social practices and norms and behaviors of the people who take care of, things like a lake or a farm or things that people are using together. And so if you look at her 8 principles for managing commons, you'll notice that they're all very much about the people. How do you define clear boundaries about who is part of governing that commons, who is able to access that resource? How do you ensure that there are ways to exit, to change the rules around how people are sharing that resource? And so sort of from, I guess like from the beginning, or I guess more recently, in defining these things as a social practice, Eleanor Ostrom really laid the groundwork for that about 20 years ago. So there's certain types of digital commons that you might think of. Internet Archive, which is where I am, is an archive, a cultural research archive. Platform co-ops, which are, an app or a service that is owned as a cooperative business, where the workers or the users are owners who are governing that application. Free and open source software, and which I won't explain because I think you all know free and open source software, but community networks, which are not as widely known, which are networks of like last mile infrastructure. So the access that you get from like your device from, that antenna or that internet service provider, and making that connection owned by the community, either as a cooperative and social enterprise, or as a public utility, like with a city or, government controlled, but democratic is the point, democratically governed network. But for many of these, digital commons, I've noticed that, you could say, we're building this as a platform co-op, or this is a community network, or this is free and open source software. Isn't it great? You say that sort of assuming that they are actually practicing the social system, the governance and co-ownership of those systems. But many times, and nothing is perfect, right? But at the same time, I would say that I think oftentimes I'm kind of disappointed in the fact that they aren't actually living by the values that they are sort of publicly saying in the internal organization of that project. And so is the form of these digital commons like superseding the actual like feeling and reality of that being a commons. So while I was preparing for this talk, actually, and these are actually things I've been thinking about for a long time, but it was actually really great that I had to do this presentation, because it actually made me think about this for the last couple of days, where it's like, okay, if there's one sort of angle in which we can look at this, I thought that there was this kind of like nested approach to this work. And so I'll talk about 3 of them tonight, or today. It's, I'm sure, morning in other places. The first is that the community has to define its shared values. The second is that we need to build a culture of trust and mutual respect. And then 3 is to establish clear boundaries around labor. And I'll go into those 3 now. So defining shared values. So for many projects, and I think many technologies that we use, the values aren't, not only are they not explicit, they're not sort of written into the bylaws and the DNA of the organization. If you think about like Google and Meta or Facebook or any of these organizations, really the main goal for them is profit. And what that means is everything else, any kind of value, any kind of social benefit sort of gets thrown out the window, just bulldozed and trashed on, because they can't. I mean, even if there are great people who really believe in even, Twitter, even if there were people there who really believed in it being something like a public square where you can have healthy dialogue around, local news or world news. At the end of the day, a billionaire could buy it because he offered a large price for it. And all of that just disappeared in the course of a few weeks. And arguably, maybe it's not disappeared yet, but, that's subjective. And so really, it's really that the organizations need to not only define them, but truly embody them. And so this is a photo from DWeb Camp. I've been involved with DWeb organizing since 2019. I helped produce this event a couple of years ago. The Internet Archive, as Brewster, the previous speaker, was saying that the Internet Archive has been sort of taking the lead in hosting and stewarding conversations around what the DWeb, the decentralized or distributed web, could be. And so really bringing together a lot of people who are thinking about this question from across the network stack, from the protocols to the networks that we access these services, like the last mile infrastructure as community networks, or the applications. And so the first two events were summits. The first one in 2016 was actually held here. And I remember being in a room actually right across the room where people were sort of talking about distributed autonomous organizations, before it's been used, worldwide. So it's really has been bringing together people who have been thinking about this very intentionally and philosophically for a long time. In 2019, we decided to have this event outside. We realized that if we were actually going to build infrastructure that roots us with each other as humans and also with the planet that we live on, that has finite, limited resources, that we should actually be outside, grounding ourselves in our world, in our reality, versus kind of like being too much in our heads and, philosophizing about it too much. So, at DWeb Camp 2019, we started to have some conversations around like, what do we want from DWeb? What is this that we actually want? Instead of saying we just don't want something to be centralized and be in opposition to what we know, what is it that we actually are wanting to build? And so this is a photo of one discussion that was held at DWeb Camp around like, what do I want as a contributor to this, as just a visitor or as a company? And that sort of snowballed into 2020 when another core contributor to the DWeb work, John Connor Ryan, and I were sort of brought together from Wendy Hanamura, who is one of the core leaders of this movement, to actually think about this, to hatch something and actually define this. And so over the course of a year, John and I, we drafted a version of the principles. We had everyone critique it all the way down very thoroughly, which was great. We just kept going back to the drawing board after every time we got feedback, and to just make it, to sharpen it, to really try and reflect what this community believed in, that was actually not just decentralized, but something more. And I say it's version 1.0 because we want this to be a living document where it's not the static thing that we just continue to think about can we be smarter and more intentional about what we care about. So this is the preamble for the DWeb principles. These principles define the values of a decentralized web based on enabling agency of all peoples. It is the basis for behavioral norms and mutual accountability. These principles originate from members of the DWeb community, those involved with and convened by the Internet Archive's work on the decentralized web. These stand alongside other sets of principles that share or expand upon these values in recognition that our efforts to build a more just and equitable world are interdependent. So I just wanted to flag two quick points about this, which is that we're very clear that this is representing a specific community whose values are reflected in this document. and that we are not trying to supersede other efforts in defining principles, but that we recognize that we kind of fit into a quilt of other efforts to, for humans to work together and build a just and equitable world. So I'm not gonna read all of them. I just wanted to highlight a few of these. So we have 5 sort of overarching themes of these principles. The first one is technology for human agency. I'll just read a couple of these. We stand for technology that enables the primacy of people as beneficiaries of the technology by upholding their security, privacy, and self-determination. I'll read the 4th one. We aim for peer-to-peer relationships rather than hierarchical control and power imbalance. And number 6, in part 1, we believe that multiple technical means will be more effective than a single technical solution to achieve ethical and people-centric outcomes. Distributed benefits. We believe that decentralized technologies will be most beneficial to society when the rewards and recognition of their success, monetary or otherwise, are distributed among those who contributed to that success. Mutual respect. We support and encourage clear codes of conduct to ensure respectful behavior and accountability. And we stand for open and transparent organizational practices, motivations, and governance in a manner that actively pursues equity, mutual trust, and respect. And number 4, empower people. The objective of building a decentralized web is to protect human rights and empower people, especially those who experience systemic inequity and prejudice. And I don't want to read all of it, but let's see, I'll read the last one. We encourage the development of tools and applications in many languages and forms with a high degree of accessibility. And last but not least is in ecological imperatives. We believe projects should aim to minimize ecological harm and avoid technologies that worsen environmental health. And you'll actually notice that this title is different from the previous slide, ecological awareness. That's actually one thing that we are hoping to change about the principles, is to make this principle about ecological imperatives much stronger, given the global crisis of climate change and everything else that we're inflicting on the planet. So these are just a list of some of the principles. If you go to getdweb.net/principles, you'll be able to see these. You'll be able to sign on, read them, digest them. But we really felt like this is just one effort at defining what it is we stood for. And we really hope that other projects across the DWeb uphold these in their work. The second sort of like sub approach to that defining principles is that organizations and people should build cultures of trust and mutual respect. A peer-to-peer decentralized web is just not possible unless we have as many people participating, if people feel safe to be themselves, to build relationships, and then actually enjoy themselves. It should not be such a slog. It should not just feel like work. Sometimes it will feel like work, but it should be fun to actually build something with other people. And as decentralized web projects, we really try to make that experience at DWeb Camp and through all of the events that we do. We want to ensure that there isn't this kind of like elitism in the space. We want to make sure, even if you're not a technologist, even if you're not doing, governance, even if you are just completely new to the space, you, as somebody who has interacted likely with the internet, with any technology, you have opinions about how it should work. And then, if you are a teacher, if you're a musician, if you are unhoused, if there's just, your human experience needs to be accounted for in the peer-to-peer decentralized web that we're building. And so when we were building DWeb 2, we wanted to make sure that those who are building the infrastructure, like were participants of camp. Like we all just wanted to show, this isn't some kind of like fancy event where, there's like this invisible labor happening to build all the infrastructure. We're actually building this, and that all of us are doing this together. And so we really try and embed our events with that spirit. And this is a photo from DWeb Camp 2022. We had over 400 people there. I believe close to 20 children as well. Really want to make sure that children are part of the discussion, because, this is the legacy that we are leaving to them. And so, yeah, that was the second kind of approach to this decentralized web work that I really think about. Number 3 is establish clear boundaries around labor. And as I said, around like the people that are building the infrastructure at camp, or, and also all these people who are maybe like involved in technology but aren't necessarily technologists, there's not enough focus on how everyone is a very valuable participant in building the kind of networks that we want in the future. And and all of the technologies that are really exciting, IPFS, all the protocols and the community networks, there's so much volunteerism. There's so many people who, because they pour their heart into it, they aren't compensated and they get burnt out. And that just is not sustainable. We really need to just think about that as a foremost like priority in any kind of system where we're trying to build a better world. And this goes back to the first approach, which is, if we're not thinking about how we're treating ourselves and each other in building these technologies, then it's not going to be a technology that will be sustainable. And so I think one part of that is making compensation explicit. Why not? We should really be thinking about how we're paying ourselves and make that less uncomfortable to talk about. So having said all that, there's one other project that I've been leading called Compost. It is a magazine and an open source tool for publishing to the decentralized web. So it's 2 sister projects. It's a magazine about the digital commons, where we curate works of art, reflection, and experiments about building the web as a shared resource. And then Distributed Press, an open source publishing tool that enables content to be published and monetized on the World Wide Web and decentralized web. And so the way that this project came about was we first were thinking about, okay, we want to make a tool for, having content on different DWeb endpoints, much like the project that was introduced before me. While we were thinking about this, we were like, okay, cool, we want to make a tool, but we should also have people who would use this tool participate in the development of this technology, and also be talking about like what the purpose and potential is of the decentralized web. And so Compost is kind of like an active use case of this tool. And it's a way for artists and activists and people who work with offline communities who don't have access to the capital I internet to practice and thinking in and also participate in the development of the decentralized web through Distributed Press. Distributed Press is also trying to be its own digital commons, in that it's a free and open source tool. We experiment with the kind of like capabilities of 3 main protocols, IPFS, Hypercore, and torrents. And so while we're doing it, we're also filing bugs, helping sort of like think about how these tools can be used for publishing. And we're kind of just trying to be sort of this like glue or bridge across these protocols to sort of like shine a light into the ways that these could work. And so the tool Distributed Press and Compost as a magazine, the goal is for them to sort of like feed into each other as they kind of like grow grow together. In the very beginning, before we launched Compost, it was really important for me to also to know that the other founders and I were aligned with what we actually believed in. And so we went on our own sort of journey to establish our values. And so our sort of three main pillars are solidarity economics. So making sure that we share revenue, that we are compensated for our labor, that this won't be another volunteer project where we all love it and then we get burnt out and never want to look at it again. We really want it to be sustainable. That we have meaningful participation. So we really work with and emphasize the fact that there are many underrepresented artists and activists who are not participating in the development of the decentralized web. And then and also for creative experimentation. The reason why a lot of us go and are addicted to the internet is actually because of all the memes and the videos and the jokes and the music that we get to see. So why not make that for the decentralized web so that then we can actually seek some content on the decentralized web that's not necessarily on the World Wide Web. And so this was our first issue that came out in March 2021. You'll notice that the URL here is hyper. So this could be accessible on the Hypercore protocol. This is issue 2 on IPFS, which you can get to through IPNS://2.compost.digital. You can use the Brave browser or Aggregor browser to visit the page on IPFS. And I guess a couple notes here, which the previous speaker was also talking about, sustainable labor and making sure that we get compensation. So far, this project has been funded by grants, but we'd really like to have it be a subscription model. We have an account on Open Collective, which is a platform for nonprofits to fiscally host any number of other projects that don't have legal incorporated status, and allow them to receive money and distribute money in a transparent way. And so we have an Open Collective account that is fiscally hosted by a co-op in Toronto called Haifa Worker Cooperative. We really want to try and build that. Another point here is that because Compost, Compost itself is like a zip file, almost like it's a tarball that everything is self-contained. So we have text pieces, and we also have some interactive maps and interactive story pieces, and that's all self-contained in JavaScript in this file. And the whole thing, we want it to be copied in as many places as possible, because that's how the decentralized web should work. At the same time, we want to make sure that the contributors to the magazine are compensated well. So that's a large part of our funding, is we make sure that in helping, in writing and building their piece for Compost, they also are compensated for their time in giving us their feedback for distributed press and informing the tool. And the works need to be Creative Commons licensed, because if we're wanting it to just kind of spread everywhere, like seeds, we don't want there to be any question that this is copyrighted and anyone to be afraid that they're hosting something that could be taken down. And so that's an agreement that we have to make with the creators from the very get-go. And so we're hoping that those kind of considerations sort of change the sort of thinking and equation around creative labor, because I'm very biased against copyright, but copyright, I think, is not a good model for many artists to make money. And so I think the decentralized web is a really good time to be thinking about how we make new types of ways for artists to get paid. How am I doing time? Okay, so I think I'll have about 5 more minutes. And so those are the 3 kind of approaches that really guides my work, but I kind of wanted to share just a few quotes to leave you with those. before I close out. There was an incredible writer and philosopher named Audre Lorde, a Black queer feminist writer, who wrote this essay, Uses of the Erotic as Power. And it's just a couple pages essay, but it really has shaped how I think about being an organizer and a writer. I'll just share this quote. I think I have two quotes here, but for as we begin to recognize our deepest feeling, we begin to give up, of necessity, being satisfied with suffering and self-negation, and with a numbness which so often seems like their only alternative in our society. My little thing is blocking the quote. The next quote is, the sharing of joy, whether physical, emotional, psychic, or intellectual, forms a bridge between the sharers, which can be that basis for understanding much of what is not shared between them and lessens the threat of their difference. For once we begin to feel deeply all aspects of our lives, we begin to demand from ourselves and from our life pursuits that they feel in accordance with that joy, which we know ourselves to be capable of. And so I come back to this essay so many times because as I said in the beginning, that first idea of defining our values, we should feel really good in the work that we're doing. That's, I think, the goal. And that when we are building the world we want to see, it should not be, we are building something in the future that's going to be great, promise, eventually it's going to be sustainable. Eventually it's going to be great. We should be trying to do that every day in the building that we're doing. And she talks about this as erotic power, but it's what she means by erotic is that deep feeling when you're she even talks about if you're reorganizing your bookshelf and then, you just you get lost in organizing your bookshelf and then suddenly it feels, it's all organized and you just feel very satisfied in that work. How do you feel that deep satisfaction with yourself and what you're doing and in the work that you're doing with others? And then another writer, let's see, that writes about this is Adrienne Marie Brown. And she also really has this idea of pleasure activism rooted in Audre Lorde's work as well. So pleasure activism asserts that we all need and deserve pleasure, that our social structures must reflect this. In this moment, we must prioritize the pleasure of those most impacted by oppression. And so not just thinking about how we enjoy this and find satisfaction in our work in maybe the positions of access that we have, but also saying, how do we make sure that those who are most suffering today can feel that and can be part of that? And these two kind of ideas really drive my work. So what's next? This is a photo of just some of the great kids that made a parade at DWeb Camp in 2019. They are the future. There's a lot of space right now to, I think, define what is decentralization and what peer-to-peer truly means. Let's see. There was just this article in The Atlantic that interviewed Brewster and I that kind of defines DWeb as opposed to Web3. I wrote this piece that's kind of trying to separate out what DWeb versus Web3 means, and the kind of values that are embedded, I believe, in both of these terminologies. But just join us. What does decentralization to you? And even if it's not decentralization, that's the other thing, is that we want this to be a very plural, diverse movement where DWeb is just one point in which we organize ourselves. If you rather say distributed or peer-to-peer or even Web3, what is it that you're really trying to do to change the world and make it better? I think that's really what the point is. So our next DWeb camp is in June 2023. Put in your calendars. We are also helping our DWeb friends in Brazil organize a camp in April 2023. Dates are still to be decided. And we have virtual meetups. And so we try and change the time zone. So sometimes it's better for like European, North American time, or it's always good for North America, sadly, because some of us are here, but it's either going to be better for you in Europe or Asia Pacific. So you can sign up to our newsletter at getdweb.net. And if you're interested in staying in touch with Compost and learning what's going on with Compost as a project, we're on Mastodon at compost.social. It's actually should be at compost@social.coop. We're on Instagram, unfortunately. We're also on Twitter, but I don't know how much longer we'll be on Twitter. And then you can check out our issues there at the URLs, either on IPFS or HTTP. And then our next issue is coming out in March 2023. And I'm also on social.coop on Mastodon at social.coop. So thank you.
Thanks so much for the speech, man. It's truly amazing. I mean, I don't really want to waste our time, but I just want to make a few like comments of my own, because like yeah, she said
you should stand in the.
Oh no, it's all right. It's all right. Okay. Okay. Stop sharing. Okay. But how?
How you...
It's a blog. Oh yeah. Oh, it's here. Okay. Stop sharing. Okay. So I think like Mai also mentioned that you're gonna like feel pleasure on what you're doing. I think this is what I have been doing or what has been like supporting me for the past years, because we have been fighting for like digital like privacy and then users data ownership, but no one like in the industry seemed to like understand this. Everybody like as you said, like as a corporation, everybody what they're caring about is just revenue. It's making money, but no one really cares about users. I think like what really drives me, to to love like Internet Archive is that you guys are putting your heart, you're putting love into all the things you are doing. It's not making money, it's making love. Like sorry.
I don't like that.
It's making people love each other.
Yeah.
And that's what's important here. And thank you so much for the speech.
Yeah. I mean, can I just comment on that a little bit? Yeah. I mean, I think we're very scrappy, so, I think revenue is important. Like making ways in which people can contribute their resources to support thing and distributing that to the people who are doing that work is really important. It's just that when profit, like how much money you make at the end of the day, is the only goal, that's when everything else gets sacrificed, right? And so I think for us, like we wish we also had, I think, a better, not a business model, but a sustainability model. But, I think there's actually a lot of really exciting discussions happening around how to not be allergic to the discussion of money in a, a nonprofit context. And I think, as I said, Open Collective is doing really interesting work around that. And maybe if I'm out of time, I need to stop, but I want
No.
Okay, really quickly.
This is a discussion time. So.
Oh, okay. So really quickly. So Open Collective itself is a corporation, but when they received venture capital money from investors, they were very clear from the beginning that they wanted to not just sell out to shareholders. And so they wrote into their bylaws that they want to turn it into a cooperative in the future. And so the people who invested understood this from the beginning. They do, get whatever terms that they get, but it's not some sort of like normal going public, IPOing kind of model. And I think that type of like, how do we make, because they needed that money, right, in the beginning to really build that platform, but they also didn't want to sell out, and become like Twitter and all the other companies. So I think it's really important that we like think about how to do those types of experimentations in innovation that is like very practical with money, you know, and at the same time is like very clear about how they're compensating people and, you know, how they fit into the ecosystem.
So yeah, I mean, in short, just don't do volunteers anymore, right?
Yeah. Or if it's a volunteer, then maybe you're paid, and it's okay if it's volunteers, right? As long as it's like explicit what the relationship is, and it's like, and you're checking in and all that.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah.
Alrighty, thanks for that. I mean, there are a bunch of questions. I would just like say it out loud, but thank you for your talk. I feel like a perspective of sexuality should be addressed as well, given that the gender context of the coding world. Do you want to comment on that?
Perspective of sexuality.
What gender?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll say that this DWeb work, a lot of us are women or non-binary people. And then also even Open Collective, which I just talked about, is led by women. And I'm not saying that that's like that men can't do this. I'm just saying that I think there's this understanding of a lot of the care work that is not thought about in a lot of tech spaces and is taken for granted. And so I think when you actually have projects that are not just run by men and also of people of different genders, of different sexualities, you just kind of open up a lot of conversation around how we are organizing ourselves. And so I don't know if that's like the specific answer, but I do think that I really hate that even this labor is gendered. You know, it should not be. It should not be. But I think just given historical context, that's just how it is.
Right. Okay. I guess this question is also for you specifically, but thank you for your talk. It's a very insightful reflection on DWeb that I had heard recently. I had noticed that you had an average project before, a student-led and student-taught project that aims to help students become what we call social justice tech entrepreneurs. I found this project very interesting. Can you just tell us a little bit about the difficulties and the learnings in doing this project?
Sure, yeah. So I kind of got my start in all this with the Everett program, which is a student project at the University of California, Santa Cruz, which is where I went for my bachelor's degree. And it was founded by a sociology professor who was teaching globalization in a class called World Society. And he had many students come up to him, you know, when he was talking about like the terrible ills of globalization and, you know, neoliberalism and trade and how harmful that was for a lot of economies and developing economies. And they said, like, what can we do? And so he started meeting with undergraduate students, and they were like, well, actually, you know, this was like in the late, I guess, mid 1990s, early 90s. And they're like, well, there's the internet, and, you know, college students know how to use websites. They know how to use all these things, but a lot of nonprofits didn't know how to do that. And so they decided to make a student-governed student program where students taught technology to each other and also would practice governance with each other in the program. And so the sort of like the course is you learn about different ways of nonprofit organizing to social enterprise and all of that. And then you take some sort of passion, whether that's education, reproductive rights, environment, and then you find a nonprofit that is working on that, and then you raise money from yourself, from grant money, and then do an internship to build them a website, build a database for them, or any technology that they actually need, and then you build that for them. And so not only as a student are you learning how to do these technologies out there, you're actually then, while you're interning with a nonprofit, you're learning about their cause and how they're doing that work. So yeah, I think definitely the Everett program has always been very core to my work. I'm also the founder of the alumni organization. I've been kind of involved since I graduated. So yeah, it's been a thing. But I think the website is everettprogram.org. You can definitely find it through Everett Program. And my internship was when I was an undergraduate. I worked in Malaysia with a Muslim feminist organization for 6 months and build websites and a database around Sharia law and child support.
All right, thank you so much. I guess we got a bunch of more questions, but I think these questions are not just for you, but for all the speakers today. So one of them is as you said, we're gonna have pleasure while we're doing stuff. But how do you think in a decentralized web, how could one have a clear purpose or a clear goal, and while also being super active and how do you have this clear? How do you find your goal, and then how do you work towards it?
Yeah, I mean, from the beginning of a project, maybe,
or as an individual who wants to join the DWeb movement or other decentralization movements. What should we do?
Yeah, what should we do? I mean, I think the first step is to sort of take a bite. There's so many aspects of this, right? What do you like doing? I think is the first question. Then the second question is what do you care about? And so maybe those come at the same time, because you need to think about what part of this problem do you want to help solve? And that's the thing about this is none of us can do this alone. None of these technologies will be the thing that will fix everything. So what you might do after sort of figuring out what do you want to work on and what do you like doing is then do your research around what other people are already doing to solve that problem. And then you can either volunteer, with them, hopefully not a volunteer, hopefully get hired to do that work, or just research it and see how you can help. People are already thinking about most things. People have already thought about these problems. So don't just, I would not suggest just saying I think I have the solution. I'm going to go work in the corner and code it. And then here, I'm going to present it to the world. But actually, learn and talk to people. And so with the DWeb, the virtual meetups, we really try and make it open. So we have lightning talks where people talk about their projects. And then afterward, we go to GatherTown and enable people to talk to each other and find each other. So yeah, I mean, I think it really is to either get involved in something that already exists or find other people who care about the same thing and build that with them. It's, I think, really hard to do anything by yourself. So being clear about what you like to do, what your goals are, and what the problem is that you want to solve, I think is the first step.
Alrighty, thanks so much. I just don't really want you to talk too much because it's super, I know.
Yeah, I'm fine. No, is there more? There's one or two more questions.
I think it's just the last question because it's for both of you guys, Libet and Mai. So, because as you said, you don't think copyright is the best for creators? Why? Or which is better? And then for creators, what should I take? Or what means should I take to make money or to be sustainable? Because as you said, in DWeb or the movement that you've been joining, you just want to help creators or artists to sustain without using the current I don't know a business model or stuff. But what is the possible way for them to sustain?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a crisis right now. If you look at Spotify, where artists make less than a penny per play, to any or people who just do so much free labor on TikTok or Instagram, they make memes and whatever, and they're just not paid. I think the current model is just not working, and I think there are efforts to make that better, right? I think Patreon and Kickstarter, other ways where you have direct relationships with your fans. So you know that as somebody contributing to an artist that you are paying for their work. Right. I think those types of models, if we had that more decentralized, would be better. So, I mean, even Patreon and Kickstarter take a huge cut. I think they, if you have followers on Patreon, you can't, I think, export your contact list, or at least you couldn't before. So they really capture you on the platform. And so I think it really is about, like, there's just such a big gluttonous fat middleman, in the middle, that is just like sucking up all this value. And it's really outdated. And I think it's really time for that. Editors and publishers do have a role, but they're really, really, because they're monopolies, they're taking a huge cut of that. And there's actually a really good book that just came out called Choke Point Capitalism by Rebecca Giblin and Cory Doctorow that talks about all the different ways that that's happening. It's pretty US focused, I would say, but many of these platforms are used around the world, and then have some really concrete solutions for how to make that better. So I'll just highlight two of those. Like one is collective, like joint action. So like when artists can collectively say, we are not going to use this platform anymore, and we're going to use something else. Like there are examples of cooperative streaming services like Resonate Co-op that actually give the value of the streams to artists. And so there's like that kind of model. They also talk about like Taylor Swift, who did a lot of advocacy for other artists and actually raised the amount that artists get from Universal for each stream. And so that type of leadership is like, we need that type of activism, right? And then the other one is, other alternative streaming services, like there are these new open source tools like MusicCat, which a couple US libraries are using, where the library can host local artists on their library streaming platform. And so they'll pay like $250 or something to this artist that is local, and then you can stream that album from the library. So instead of like, having to go to Spotify, I actually get probably way more money from that, even if it's, $250 isn't a lot, but at least for, exposure, it's something. And so I think like different business models, work like organizing with other artists, and I think if like copyright is on the table, to really think about is copyright helping you, are other tools and other licensing methods that could be better. I think as artists having sort of a reflection on that might be healthy.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you so much for the answer. And hey, Livet, you're online, and if you want to like elaborate more on this, you can just definitely go ahead. But yeah, you can just
talk about, okay, I'll end with my experience in Malaysia. I guess the question is, would you like to talk more about your experience in Malaysia? It influenced the things you're doing now. Yes, definitely. Okay. Yeah. I went to Malaysia when I was 21, and I think it was a really big, I think the biggest thing that was eye-opening for me was like how much space the US takes around the world. Like I was there, this will age me. You can do the calculations, but I was in Malaysia during the Obama election, and the first one, and people were really excited about Obama, and it was so interesting to me that like there was like impersonators of Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin was ridiculous. And there was a show, there's a US show called Saturday Night Live, where this comedian, Tina Fey, plays Sarah Palin. And like the number of people that I ran into who knew Tina Fey and then knew SNL was just like, oh my God, I felt kind of like ashamed in a way, because I was like, wow, I think as an American, like it feels like it's kind of the center of the world, but like it should not be, first of all. And then I just felt like I didn't know anything about Malaysian politics before I got there, And so I think that was a big thing for me, was like not sort of getting stuck in this idea that the US should be the center of things. And I think today too, with this DWeb work, really trying to sort of decenter the US in the decentralized web work, I think is a really big priority for us.
Yeah.
Like, not only should it not just be the US or in English, but in a lot of other, languages and sort of like understandings of and cultural understandings of how information should be stewarded. And so, yeah, I think that was, I could talk all night about how Malaysia was interesting, but I think that's like the most relevant thing for now.
Okay, thank you so much for everything, like the speech and then, yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Right, for sharing all of these to us. And it's super important to, at least, like, I'm not sure, but like, especially for us, like the Chinese audiences, we can definitely just learn more about like how this like DWeb thing is going on, because I've been talking about like DWeb like since I went back to China like in 2019, but never got the chance to really have all the organizers to talk about it. So thank you so much for for sharing. And then so Oliva, do you have anything that you want to like elaborate on, especially on the IP? Or if not, I think I can just kind of wrap it up and then say bye. Sorry,
I'm good. Thank you.
If you want to say something, go.
Oh, yeah.
Damn, my bad. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. And I think it's been a while. And thank you so much. And by the way, so if you are curious about the product that I showed today, that I will share a link in the comments, and it's a GitHub link. So basically we are building an open source website builder, and you can find the source code and try the product on GitHub if you are interested. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks so much for sharing. I guess I can just wrap up with like a few sentences today. And so thanks everybody for helping out build this like conference, because Wendy, Brewster, and you can without you guys, and the homie, and then Hannah, without you guys, just this cannot happen at all. And thank you so much for all the audiences and all the speakers today, because it's I think it's a really fruitful all 5 speeches are super fruitful, and then we learned a lot about how you guys think of P2P, and how we should like consider P2P or Web3 or DWeb or like distributed web or like decentralized web. It doesn't matter. I mean, like, I think as my said, like, we don't really need to talk about like the terms ourselves. All it matters is our goal, is like how we are reuniting people together, how we like, improve the process of like cooperations. It doesn't matter what the terms we're talking about. What matters most is the things we're working on, and then work with pleasure. And then thank you so much for coming today. Stay tuned for our like next 6 city panels in next week. And I guess that'll be it. 对，我应该用中文说，对不起。Sorry, I should say it in Chinese. But 谢谢大家今天能够来我们今天的年会。
As for our annual conference, well, stay tuned for next week. On our WeChat public account and website, we have several ones from Taipei, Shanghai, Shanghai, Wuhan, Hangzhou, and also in the 6 different cities. And we have several more city panels. Stay tuned for that. You can find information on our web chat, on our webpage. So we hope that we can see you then.
Recording stopped.